and call this meeting to order. This is the annual council retreat, which is in reality one big study session. So I will ask our city clerk to check for quorum.
Thank you, Mayor. Members of the council, if you're here, please indicate so by answering in the affirmative. Councilmember Flyer. Here. Councilmember Lee Hang.
Here.
Councilmember Daly. Here. Vice Mayor Weinberg.
Here.
Mayor Meadows.
Here.
Thank you. Yeah, no one absent, Mayor.
All right. So we're going to take public comment just now and once, and this will cover any items on the agenda. And so if you're online and you want to make a public comment, please raise your hand so we get a sense of how many participants and anyone in the room. So we have one public comment here in the room. So let's see. There's a few more coming online. Since this is a study session and every item we discuss tonight will come back to us, I'm going to give speakers a minute and a half. So, City Clerk, does that throw you out of whack, or is that one of your default times?
That's not for anyone. I can count.
You can count. Okay. And I don't know that we have the cards, but we can record our first speaker in the room will leave. Our city clerk is there.
I'm ready.
Okay. Yes. Actually, I'll check with Councilmember Liang. Can you hear me speak?
The speaker, I can't hear the speaker very well.
Maybe speak. I mean, none of us have mics, so just project. Oh, I can project. Let's see if
I can open up Zoom on my computer.
How's this for sound check, council member?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, I'll speak loudly. Thank you. My name is Janine Valadez. I'm a Parks and Rec Commissioner, but speaking as a member of the public today. I'm only going to talk about the commission's part. I would trust you folks will figure out the strategic goals part. I really would like I'm not speaking for the Parks and Rec Commission, but I do have some opinions therein. I believe that the Parks and Rec Commission is being underutilized, and I would like to hope that you would look at the definition in the code as to what the scope of the work of the commission, particularly with regard to advancement, I'll quote, advancement of sound parks and recreational planning and programming, and also even budget recommendations to the council. I think the scope of the commission is small relative to the potential that it could do, insofar as you are considering eliminating commissions or consolidating commissions. I don't know where your heads are at on that, but there are some opportunities. For example, in many municipalities that I looked around, public arts and parks and rec are very closely tied, if not the same commission. Even in some agencies, the historical commission belongs to Parks and Rec, and they're given some purview over not only parks and land, but buildings historically to do historical preservation. And then also consolidation opportunities between either the Planning Commission and Complete Streets, or that's time in.
That's time, yes. Yeah, thank you. You can always email those to us.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, that'd be good. No other speakers in the room, so City Clerk.
Our next speaker is going to be Linda The Sith. Linda, are you there?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, council members, for all the work you do to make Los Altos a more sustainable community. I see that council recently discussed vehicle miles traveled in order to minimize greenhouse gases. You should also look at this problem from another source, gas leaf blowers. According to the California Air Resources Board, a very reliable source, 1 hour of the best-selling commercial gas leaf blower emits smog-forming pollution comparable to driving a Toyota Camry about 1,100 miles, approximately the distance from Los Angeles to Denver. That's 1 hour of leaf blower and 1,100 miles of driving are comparable. To put it another way, 1 hour of gas leaf blower emits pollution comparable to driving a Toyota Camry approximately 22 hours. These high polluting gas leaf blowers are prevalent throughout our community. Let's create and enforce a more effective gas leaf blower ordinance and significantly improve the quality of life in Los Altos. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sid. That is an agenda item that will be coming up in the near term, so we'll talk about it then. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Dashiell Lee.
Hello, my name is Dashiell Leeds. I'm the conservation organizer for the Sierra Club Loma Prieta chapter. We're extremely pleased to see that environmental sustainability is in the list of the 5-year strategic goals, and we hope you keep it as a high priority within those goals this year as well. We recently saw staff's plans for reach codes. We think those plans are good, even though there are opportunities to improve. But we ask at a minimum going forward to adopt staff's plans for reach codes, and please do not delay or water down the language. Building electrification is something that's really important, not only for community health, but also to reduce the amount of stranded assets that we're allowing to be built, and taking advantage of opportunities to switch out assets when that's equitable and economical. So we really hope that you prioritize engaging your staff and directing staff to begin preparing for the next code cycle and for the electrification of existing buildings. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Leeds.
Our last speaker is Roberta Phillips.
Hi, this is Roberta. So I think the number one priority has to be achieving a balanced budget where your expenditures do not exceed your revenues. If you don't do that, then you can't do anything else. One thing that you discussed about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, was vector control for downtown. I think that's something that we should look at for across the city for health and safety reasons. And the third thing is, I did hear someone talk about leaf blowers, and we do have a limited budget. We do have limited policemen. And I know that there's been a lot of burglaries. A friend of mine just had his catalytic converter stolen off of, the street in front of his house, with 2 other residents on a cul-de-sac had the same thing. So in relationship to priorities, I think that the police should spend their time on, the thefts and the burglaries that are going on in this town, because that is also a safety issue that people care a great deal about. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Phillips.
We have another hand that's been raised since, and that speaker is Joe Beninado.
Hi, good evening, everybody. This is Joe Beninado, speaking as a resident, not as a planning commissioner. I think you have an opportunity this year to really swing for the fences. And we've been kicking a number of cans down the road for the last couple of years, specifically things like making sure that our public safety organizations, the police and fire, have reasonable facilities that don't have flooding in the basements of and issues with roofs leaking. And I don't honestly know how we're going to solve that problem, but I hope we make some strides there. I think that should be one of your goals for this year. Secondly, you know, we've had a Halsey House sitting around, you know, supposedly in mothballs at this point, but really love to see us make a decision on the future of that and implement whatever that decision is. Finally, with regards to electrification, you know, having looked at it recently myself and realized that, you know, there's $100,000 bill to completely electrify our house. I think we're going to have to find, you know, a way to provide incentives to residents to switch over, you know, more carrots versus sticks. And I think if we do some of those things, you guys have the opportunity this year to move them forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beninato. And City Clerk, I see we have one more. So before we have number 3990 start, I'm going to say that this is the last speaker. So go ahead, take it away, City Clerk.
Phone caller, can you hear us? Last
Hello,
number.
can you hear me?
Oh, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, it's Stacy Banerjee. Sorry for the late hand raising. I'm in Tahoe. The weather's bad and I don't have a very good connection. So I'm the chair of the Complete Streets Commission. I may just say briefly a couple minutes on that and then also a comment as probably more broadly as a resident. The commission has submitted to you what we think are the priorities for the year for Complete Streets. We certainly welcome your input and we certainly welcome any other input you need as you make decisions on the budget, the strategic goals for the city, as well as the structure of the commissions and the review that you're going through on that. I would also add, as a commissioner and also the chair of the VTA BPAC, drawing attention to the recent changes with the emergency orders being lifted, understand the need for in-person meetings, but I also understand that there are exceptions for that with the Brown Act and exceptions with some new assembly bill that came forward to the city. And I just want to understand what are the options for commissioners there, because suddenly moving to everybody must attend in person, I'm concerned it's going to bring us to some inability to achieve quorums. The other thing that I would say is I hope that you will talk to some of the commission chairs or vice chairs before you consider reducing the number of meetings or other things like that before a particular commission and get their input.
Thank
I
you,
think
Ms.
I might stop.
Ms. Banerjee, we gave a minute and a half and you've used yours.
Oh.
So please feel free to send us in any additional comments.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Sorry, I don't have a timer in front of me.
That's all right. Stay safe up there in the wind.
Thank you.
The worst wind. Yeah, I'm assuming it's worse up there. All right, so with that, we're going to close public comment. Before we move to item 1, I just wanted to say a few words. First, thank you to my colleagues and to the public for joining us for our retreat, air quotes. And but this is we want to view it as a working session, and so that's why we wanted to look a little bit more casual, be oriented that way. I also have done something that we don't usually do, which is assigned time estimates to each agenda item. And the reason I've done that is because as we go through the items, if we aren't finished within that time, and in fact, in some of these items, we know we won't finish per se, but I will draw it to a close and we will determine what the next steps are and when we will pick it up and carry it forward again. Again, this is a study session. Some of these discussions may lead to additional study sessions, but essentially these are topics that we've been thinking about for quite a while, and so we're going to get the discussion started. So it may feel like I'm interrupting us in the middle of a discussion, but we're going to just keep this as sort of the preliminary approach to some of these issues in front of us, and then we will not truncate anything if we still have things that we need to discuss, we'll just do it at another time. So with that, I'm happy to introduce Ms. Sillipen, who will take us through, actually, I'm very interested to see our Los Altos headlines from, which will be a year from now. In the Wall Street Journal, or what paper are we thinking? Town Crier? We're thinking big, okay, okay.
I was shooting for the Post, it would have been a totally different headline.
Yeah.
All right, well, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. Irene Sillipen, HR Director for the city, and I have the privilege of facilitating today's icebreaker activity. And I have a presentation of PowerPoint, so everyone joining us tonight can follow along. I did receive all the headlines ahead of time. So I will, in no particular order, I will be showing them, and I will ask you to raise your hand and identify the headline that was written by each of you. And we'll move on along that way. All right. So John, if you can help me with the slides, that would be great. Thank you. So for everyone joining us, a little overview of what each council member received as instructions for the activity today. So the activity for today, as mentioned by the mayor, is the Los Altos newspaper headline, 1 year from now. So I ensured that they had fun and creative with this activity and aspirations to what they envision Los Altos to be highlighted a year today as city's major accomplishments for us. So as we go along with this activity, you will hear from each of them what inspired them to title the specific headline that we will be reviewing today. So again, this was fun, creative, and an opportunity for us to really dive into our hopes and dreams for the city of Los Altos. So I'm going to start with headline number 1. And again, if this is your headline, if you can please identify yourself, read the headline, and tell us your aspirations for the specific headline. Again, there is no particular order of how I identify these. As I received them, I started putting these on slides. So with headline number 1. It is I. Yeah.
Oh, Irene, well, thank you so much, Ms. Sillipen, for putting this together. It was a very great idea. I liked it. So my headline at the beginning of 2024, the end of 2023, basically says, we as a council would have made significant progress in the 4 big plans we've been talking about and we've adopted over the last couple of years. And I think for me, this segues well into the strategic goal discussion, because as I was preparing for this meeting, I have a draft of what I think we should focus on, and they're all tied to these plans. And so that's how I came up with this headline. I think it's something that the community wants to see, where we adopt something and we move forward with implementation.
I think I lost volume. Hello?
Says that we're still recording.
Okay.
Lynette, can you hear us?
I hear you now.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Hello? Hello?
I'm suspecting the emergency generator maybe has kicked in.
That's covered. Or city attorney.
Take the opportunity for that. What does it say about it?
Hello?
Hi, Lynette. Did you hear the mayor?
No, I hear you. So you.
Okay, let me have you. So I'll have her repeat because the public can also hear me.
Okay, I can unmute.
Okay.
Let me. Can you hear me, council member?
Yes, I
Okay.
can hear you now.
We've had a power outage
we might be under emergency generator power. I'm not quite sure yet. We're not, we don't have an emergency generator. Okay, so it's in the budget. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so we're trying to figure out, I mean, it's good news.
So there's no power at
We're
the
trying to
community
figure
center?
out, if we can, how best to continue operations. So I ask for your patience, council member, and also the public's patience as we regroup.
Oh, no. I just saw
I'm gonna
the,
go on mute again and please hold on. I won't count this towards our headlines time. Whoa.
okay.
Just by way of update, we haven't had much progress here, so I will report back to keep you apprised as to what's going on. Do you, yeah, can we come over? Do you have power? So the update, if anyone is out there listening in Zoom land, is that we think we have power, but we need to change rooms because this room has flashing lights to do with the power outage. So we will relocate. That'll probably take us 10 to 15 minutes, and then we will resume. So my apologies for the delay, but we will continue the meeting. So thank you for your patience. If you can hear me by way of an update, we're just getting reorganized in a different room. Should be just a few more minutes.
Is that giving any color?
So by way of update.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's actually probably a better view of us.
I don't know. Renee, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Awesome.
Okay, good.
Definitely the power strip.
Okay.
That guy's working.
Councilmember Liang, you can see us and hear us, okay? And,
Yes.
okay, we have regrouped. And, yeah, so we're still doing a little fiddling, but I think we're probably at the point where, Councilmember Flyger, were you, I have a video headline?
Yeah, those are working, because you've got power here and here. Yeah.
My breaker's not.
No, I'm not.
We're getting that.
I can. Go on either way.
So maybe we can be a minimal disruption in the background. We'll try and get this on.
Yeah, okay. So we can start with the second headline, I think. So just so the public, again, I hope, Councilmember, nod if you can still hear us. Yes, okay, good. So we're gonna move to headline number 2. Okay,
All right.
take it away.
Thank you. Headline number 2, who had, let's see, who wrote this one?
That might be me.
If you don't mind.
Unless, did anybody else think?
That's me. I knew that was you.
All right, well, Los Altos agrees to build parking structure with a park on top. What's next? The theater, affordable housing? Tell us your inspiration.
Well, my inspiration was a conversation that I had with the city manager. We were talking about ways to fund a parking structure with the park on top, and lots of really good ideas that seem to make it quite possible. And it's related to the other 2 items because when I go around town talking to residents, many of them express concerns about parking. And if we want to devote city land to affordable housing and to a theater, we're gonna lose a lot of parking. So I thought, hey, why don't we build some parking? And then we can build a theater and affordable housing without having that be the stumbling block.
I love it. Wonderful.
And a way to spend park and loop funds, you know.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for sharing that. That was fun. Good. All right, headline number 3. Come in. We see your cursor. There it goes. All right, headline number 3. I know who this long headline. Who would like to?
Los Altos community unites to progress the city in an inclusive, equitable, sustainable, and fiscally responsible way to 1, plan for public safety infrastructure improvements. 2, do our part to fight climate change. 3, do our part to participate in regional solutions to our regional challenges. 4, decide on the future of Halsey House and Redwood Grove more broadly. 5, commit to the acquisition of more land for open space or parks. 6, actualize the downtown vision. And 7, pledge to continue to work cooperatively and respectfully for the betterment of the community in years to come.
Love it. Good. Tell us more. Tell us.
Okay, so here's my thought. I broke this down into 2 areas because I think that our goals can also be broke down into 2 areas. So the first sentence really, I think, sets forth the values that I think all of us should find common ground on. Items 1 through 7 are the more physical ways of moving forward. But if we can unite on our values, I think it becomes a lot easier to have productive discussions about what to do and some of the things that we want to accomplish in terms of the actual nut and bolts. And if we look at our goals, I think some of them really are better thought of as values as opposed to qualifying them as objectives. And we'll talk more about that at the appropriate time, but values and tangible accomplishments.
Really great way to summarize that.
And this is a headline, Vice Mayor. I just want to make sure.
Very nice. It took the full front page.
Yes.
Wonderful. All right, headline number 4. Oh, we need someone to push the button.
So actually just be like, yeah.
Headline number 4, Councilmember Liang.
I had 3 different headlines that I thought of. Based on what's going on in other parts of our county, we see collaborative opportunities in making way for a shuttle program within multi-jurisdictional programs. And the last one was with Cupertino and Santa Clara, and hopefully we can expand that program to include Los Altos and Los Altos Hills. I think that's what we're hoping to try to get more cars off the street, and that was one of them. The other one I had was, it's something that we've always talked about regarding a park in North Los Altos. We've encouraged it for 5150. So that's another headline. And we're always looking to enhance more green space. That's the goal of our Parks Master Plan. And the number 1 goal, and many of us are from our Parks Commission, so we're all familiar with that. And then as we've strived to make improvements in other facilities, like in south part of Los Altos, hopefully we can get our new cooling system, as well as our modernization of our kitchen and water heater down there at Grant Park.
Wonderful.
And hopefully it'll get realized soon.
Thank you. All right, and headline number 5.
Who's tonight? The only one who followed directions. Los Altos unseat Sunnyvale to claim the #1 spot for happiest city in America. Take that, Mayor Klein. And so my inspiration from that, except I thought I might be accused of cheating, was to actually say that we'd actually have no headline a year from now, because everything was running so smoothly, so well, that everyone's so bored and no one pays attention to council anymore. And so there would be no headline. I figured that, I needed to participate. Hence, we're unseating Sunnyvale for happiest city in America.
Wonderful, great job. I love it. Great. Well, thank you. I, along the lines, I put some thought in mine was similar to this, being the employer of choice.
There we go.
So
Exactly.
that would have been from my perspective. So thank you, everyone. I hope you had fun. It opened your mind for creativity, possibilities, and thank you for allowing me to facilitate this process.
Thank you. It was great, especially the, moving our chairs and changing rooms. Okay, so with that icebreaker, we're going to go ahead and move into item number 2. And so this is about our strategic goal, and Mr. Maginot is.
I am here and I am ready.
Okay.
I will do my best to not blow the power in the building. Pull this up really quick. Okay, so for to introduce the item, what we're going to discuss very briefly. We want to take a look at the already adopted 5-year council priorities, determine sort of at the high level subjects, if those are still appropriate, if there are any missing. And then once the council has done that, then we'll go into sort of affirming the definition of the priorities, those 1 or 2 sentences council spent a lot of time crafting, to determine whether those are still appropriate as well. So here are the 9 council priority topics. And so with that, I'll pause here and let the council discuss and determine whether or not these are still appropriate, if there's any that should be removed, any that are missing, and then we can go from there.
And so what I think we'll do for this is, I imagine we don't necessarily have questions per se. So each council member can kind of start offering their impressions. If they have a question, they can ask it. But I don't think we have to do it the way we usually do, which is ask questions and then go around and discuss. So do I have a volunteer to go first? All right, Councilmember Fleischer.
And I alluded to this when I was doing my headline, which as I was preparing for the retreat, and thinking about what strategic goals I think we as a council should focus on this coming year, I really looked at those 4 plans that we adopted over the last couple of years, because I think it's important for us to move forward with implementing elements of those plans. And so for me, looking at these 9 goals, I have narrowed it down to 6. I know. And 1 would be housing, because that ties into our housing element update. Then I have number 3, which is fiscal sustainability. Then number 4, and how we drafted community safety last time. I think we tried to merge public safety with street safety and different forms of safety. I would actually do a separate public safety goal and then have a separate goal related to the Complete Streets Master Plan. And then I would have number 6, the environmental sustainability, and that of course is tied to the CAP. And then my number 6 goal would be business communities, which is our current number 9, and that's tied to the downtown vision plan. So those are the 6 goals I think we as a council should work on this coming year, because those are related to plans that staff and our commissions and we have to work on anyway this year.
I made the mistake of taking notes, so I kind of lost.
That's fine, I'll go over.
Yeah, so I have heard where you talked about public safety and complete streets, and then you went from 4 to
6. Environmental sustainability tied to the CAP.
Yeah.
And then the business communities tied to the downtown vision plan. So you should have 6 there.
1, 3, 4, 6.
So it's 1, 3, 4, but I'm calling number 4 instead of community safety, public safety. Then I'm adding a new goal specific to street safety and traffic safety tied to the Complete Streets Master Plan. Then move to number 6, which is environmental sustainability, and number 9, which is business communities. So there should be 6.
Yes, ma'am.
I like where you're going with that, and I was thinking a lot along the same lines. We do have these plans that we adopted last year, which is really just amazing. You know, when you're in the middle of it, I think you don't realize what a big deal it was that we have these new modern documents that are telling the world, this is our policy on the environment, this is our policy on complete streets. Looking at the 9 boxes that we have here, I also thought that it would be better to combine some of them or take some of them off. And some of what we have up here as goals for the last 2 years or the last year, I really do see as values. Fiscal sustainability, I think that's a value. One of the most important things that we accomplished over the past 2 years, I believe, is modernizing the way that we budget and the way that the whole finance department works. And we've gone from a system that was antiquated, and we're not there yet, but we're getting there. I see fiscal sustainability not as a goal of the council, but as a value of the city. The city manager spent a lot of time modernizing the way that we budget, the way that we handle our finances, and Gabe, correct me if I'm wrong, but you would have done that whether or not that was one of our goals, right?
That's correct.
So having it as a goal, I don't think is necessary. And going back to what we did in 2021, which was similar, we had 8 boxes instead of 9. The fiscal sustainability objectives, none of them were really something that we could point to and say we did that. If we want our priorities to be thought of as objectives, and I think that's a good way of looking at them, I'd like us to be able to say we did that. But when it comes to fiscal sustainability, the objectives are continue to seek funding as we come out of COVID and update our fee schedule on an annual basis. And yeah, I mean, those are things that we're doing anyway, but I don't see them as priorities. I see them as values, which govern how we end up operating the city as a whole. So I would take out fiscal sustainability. I would take out community engagement for the same reason. Community engagement is extraordinarily important, but it's another objective or priority that doesn't have any real hard objective to it that we can point to. It's a value that I think we should have, and I think that staff and the council does have as we move forward. I'm glad that you separated, you really kind of combined housing and land use. Looking at what we did 2 years ago, almost every objective that we set forth for land use, we actually accomplished. And there's only one that we haven't fully accomplished, and we're on our way there. So staffing, I would almost consider that a value as well for the same reasons that for fiscal sustainability and community engagement. We made a policy decision as a council to really make sure that we are treating our staff appropriately, fairly, so that we're getting the staff that our community deserves. Going back to I'm only on one screen, which is to get the power back on. But so of what you suggested, I would take off fiscal sustainability. Public safety, I'm open to the idea, but I'd like to hear more about what you're thinking in terms of a priority for public safety. What is it we're going to point to as, here's a priority we had, and here is our key performance measurement that shows that we met it.
The police subcommittee.
Okay. That sounds good to me. And then I like those that you have.
This is a little bit more of a discussion. Can I ask you both or any council member? I don't think I've heard either of you yet mention asset management. And is there a reason for that would be incorporated into some of the other goals?
For me, yes, because I think with Complete Streets Master Plan under a cap, we will focus on the roads, right? We want to get our PCI up. Under the Downtown Vision Plan, there's some city facilities that are considered as part of the Downtown Vision Plan. So I think for me, asset management, the things that we actually defined as asset management last year could be roped into those other plans that we've identified.
Thanks, Mayor.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I'm trying to put Halsey House and Redwood Grove in that into the 6th piece as listed, and I would actually take off fiscal sustainability.
Mhm.
Where would housing house and urban growth fit into the other five?
Well, it depends on how, for Holiday House, for me, that could actually be tied onto environmental sustainability, but it depends on what council decides to do with their regular code regarding preservation. But I'm open, if, you know, I'm open to adding it as a
Okay.
separate item.
So so then Councilmember Daley, and then Councilmember Liang will come to you next.
Well, I actually have a category that I think housing house would fit under.
Okay, go ahead.
For me, the priorities would be, I strong consensus on the number one priority being housing. 2, environmental adaptation and action. 3, commercial vibrancy in our downtown. And under that umbrella go many, many things, right? But it's very much aligned with downtown vision. And then public safety. But I would put Halsey House under vibrancy because it is the absolute opposite of vibrancy at the moment. Whereas if Redwood Grove, if something were done about Halsey House, Redwood would be a more enjoyable community asset. I don't know what the solution, I'm not determining what that solution would be. But as the status quo persists, it is anything but vibrant.
Okay, Councilmember Liang?
I definitely believe that fiscal sustainability is something that needs to be maintained. It has to be something we keep as a priority because it helps as a guide for any decisions we make as well. When we talk about Halsey House and other facilities, that's why I feel asset management is important. Asset management speaks to all our public facilities, our deferred maintenance, our PCI, as stated by Councilmember Flygore. It's what we own and what we need to take care of. So I definitely feel asset management is something that needs to be there. It keeps us on point that we have a lot of deferred maintenance and we need to make that priority. So that's why asset management needs to be there. I would add a new one, which would be the modernization of our public safety facilities. When we felt that we wanted to focus on the community center, we made that a priority and made that a goal. And that's why I would put modernization of our public safety facilities as an additional priority. That way it lets the public know that that's what we would like their support on, what we are planning to do, and that's our goal. So they're on board with us because as we need to work to get a bond measure passed, it's important that they know that that's a top priority for us.
Thank you, Councilmember. So let me give my impressions. I do think that, well, I mean, what's really cool is when you look at this, we've made a lot of progress in just a couple of years, really. So a lot has been accomplished, and thanks to staff and the community for coming along in that journey. So that's good. I do think housing and land use become one kind of thing, whether land use is implied because of the adopted housing element, but so those become one goal. I do like that there are certain values, that there are certain baselines that we have to accomplish. Fiscal sustainability is one of those. I mean, I don't think we ever consider doing a not balanced budget intentionally, unless the system had some surprises for us. So fiscal sustainability, community engagement, and staffing, now that we've put policies in place, those are all baselines. They are expectations. They're not, as the Vice Mayor was saying, they're not goals. We will do them. They are something we will do every year. So so that leaves us with housing.
community safety, and Councilmember Lee phrased it sort of as modernization of public safety. I mean, there's really multifacets, whether it's our roads and other multimodal transportation solutions, and whether it's asset management focus of public safety. But that is kind of that's a big area we do need to focus on. Environmental sustainability, keep implementing the CAP. I mean, we've got these really important plans that have been put in place. So we've got guidelines now, and so we need to look at them each year and determine, just like what Director Zorns is doing to us or with us on the housing element, where the planes are coming into the runway, and each meeting we know what we're going to look at. Well, we need to look at all of our plans that way and plan for implementing the things that make sense there. So environmental sustainability obviously is CAP, and then we talked about complete streets plan up in regards to community safety. And then we have business communities, whether we call it vibrancy, whether we call it business communities, whether we talk about sustainable and thriving communities. I don't really care what we call it. I mean, I just care that it be a goal for all of us. So, John, I don't know if you can
summarize.
Can you?
More or less. And I apologize, Vice Mayor, I did not, I got one of your stated goals, but I did not catch the rest. So when we get to them, if you could jump in and clarify. So going through the list of current priorities, I heard 4 council members who said housing is still a priority. Combine land use with housing in some form. I heard 2 council members say fiscal sustainability is still a priority. I heard 2 who said, well, it's sort of part of what the city does. Community safety, 1, 2, 3, 4. I heard in some form, whether that's public safety or public safety facilities, or it's combined community safety, sort of a broadened version. Let's see here, 1, 2, 3 council members I heard, at least 3 say environmental sustainability is still one. And then 3 who said business communities are still a priority as well. Staffing, community engagement, asset management, and fiscal sustainability were ones that did not have 3 or more who highlighted those as priorities. All right, staffing, community engagement, asset management, fiscal sustainability. And if I'm wrong on that, I apologize. And then Councilmember Flygore split out the community safety into public safety and the Complete Streets Master Plan as separate items, separate priorities. And Councilmember Lee Ing changed the community safety to sort of a modernization of public safety facilities. That is what I heard.
I just said clarification on that, John, if
Yes,
that's
please.
okay. I still believe community safety should be number 1, but when I say the public safety facilities, then we should either call it out as our updating or new modernization, or new police station / fire safety, fire department facilities as well. So just like I stated, it was when we called out the community center, we focused it as calling that out and made sure that that stayed up front and center, and that should be a front and center priority as well.
Thank you. So I guess to recap then, the housing community/public safety, that the council can determine what that looks like. Environmental sustainability, business communities still have a majority of the council who have said that those are priorities still.
And I just want to address the public safety, community safety, and confirm that that does include the Complete Streets Master Plan. I am fine if it's not called out separately, and if we want to use community safety like we did last year, then I want to make sure the language is clear that it includes the Complete Streets Master Plan and public safety. I'm also comfortable separating them, as I propose, where you do public safety as one separate from complete street safety. And then for public safety, it's definitely the policing, the police station, task force subcommittee that I was thinking we could work on. And very similar to what Councilmember Liang is saying, you know, we would highlight that as our public safety goal for this year, moving forward on a new police station. Because again, as we all know, we have limited resources, limited staffing. There are many things we all want to do. And we'll hear from Mr. Zorns about how much we have to do by law. So that's why for each of these, I tried to think of one or two things that would fall under the broader category.
Make a comment then, which I agree. I mean, I think community, it was intended that even last year that Complete Streets Master Plan was part of community safety. It talks about transportation safety and other things like that. So we can make it explicit that that's in there, but I think it's a good idea to call out the process and the decision that we need to go through this year to address the neighborhood safety, public safety, infrastructure questions ahead of us. So I do think that's a good suggestion, and we can do that. So we would still keep community safety, which would include Complete Streets Master Plan, and potentially add one specific to the goal of defining how we're going to move forward to address safety infrastructure. Is there any disagreement on that? I'm not sensing any disagreements. So where does that leave us, John?
So then the next, so now that sort of the council has identified the top line priorities, what I was going to do is bring up the language that sort of defined each one. This is what council worked on and adopted last year. The council can determine if it's still appropriate or if you want to make changes to this language as the council wish.
One thing I'm not clear that we addressed is, and I don't know, I don't have the exact tally in front of me, but we had some discussion between some things underlying how we do business versus other things that would be explicit goals. And so there were items such as staffing, community engagement, and I think fiscal sustainability, but I don't know how uniform, how many of us supported that proposal. I mean, because I could see fiscal sustainability, we still have to bring the new system online, right? Whatever it's called, Trevor, Hands, Tyler, I knew it was, okay. So there are some goals associated with it. But I don't, I agree with the idea that some things are just how we're going to do business. It's a requirement, I think, that we.
So I think as long as it's clear to staff, and I think it is, that if we take staffing, community engagement, and fiscal sustainability off of the list of priorities, it doesn't mean that they're not important to us, and it doesn't mean that it's less important than whatever we're keeping on the list. It's a recognition that we're expecting those three values to be considered in everything that we do. Everything that staff makes happen, from the priorities above the water line to everything that happens below the water line to make the city work. And I'm seeing nodding as I think that they do get it.
Councilmember Liang.
Even though it's something that you state that it's business that we currently are mindful of, I think it reassures the public that we will be conscious of the decisions we make if we maintain fiscal sustainability. I mean, we were concerned about going into the red. If we don't have this fiscal sustainability up there, it's important that everyone knows our goal is to make sure that we always keep the city in the black. We are going to make decisions as well as how we look at things with that scope in mind. So I think it is critical to maintain fiscal sustainability. It is incumbent on us to keep it as a goal. So I would highly encourage keeping that as a goal.
Thank you, Councilmember Flyer.
Thank you, Mayor. What about if we have overarching intro for priorities, and in that language, we talk about fiscal responsibility, similar to the headline from the vice mayor, where he had, that opening line and then the list of goals.
I think it's a great idea.
John, Mr. Maginot, did you follow that?
Yeah.
Okay,
So it'd be sort of a, hate to call it this, because I don't think that's what you're intending it to be, sort of the value statement.
Yes, that's,
yeah.
Well said, Mr.
What I was gonna say is this is very much like the, sort of the corporate strategy sessions that we've done, where you start with the mission, then the vision, and the values, and the goals, and the objectives, right? So what we're actually talking about are goals and objectives, but from a higher level, your mission, your vision, and your values shape how you pursue those goals. So having a values statement as a preface to our goals, I think is totally appropriate. And I would totally support having financial, whatever the language is, but those things that we've sort of extracted and said these aren't goals can still be in that value statement.
And Councilmember Liang, can't tell if your hand is still up or is it up because you have additional contributions?
So I'm not quite sure on if we're going to add another one, or I think that when I provided, but I don't know if we're going there. So we're going through which one?
Right. And I think I have one more question for John before we get to more detailed wording, which probably addresses similar to what you're asking about, Councilmember Liang. So we really haven't, asset management may have morphed into the public safety efforts and strategy and planning that we need to do this year. I'm not clear on whether asset management overall still belongs. There was some difference of opinion, but we still have other assets that aren't spelled out by modernization of public safety or whatever we call it. So I think we do have assets we're going to be discussing and hopefully managing.
Yes, and of course the council it's your prerogative how you like to handle it. A lot of our assets the plan for those will be incorporated in the CIP and the budget process. And so if the council does not wish to have a separate specifically called out goal for various projects, but wishes to address that as part of the budget, that's certainly something that we can do.
Okay, and I'm not sure where my colleagues came down on that. Because certainly, and actually I didn't state, I forgot to state at the beginning that all of this translates in terms of specifics when we look at the budget. That's where the prioritization will happen, and where the SIP planning will happen as well. So what do we feel about asset management? And Councilmember Liang, I don't know if I even had the same question or if I sidetracked us, so please go ahead.
I definitely felt that the new police station law enforcement facility should be a new separate from asset management.
Yes, we've
As-
agreed on that, actually. We
Okay,
will-
and then asset management, that has been something that I believe it's a goal of the city because we recognize that there is so much deferred maintenance. And highlighting that we are going to continue to make it a priority is important for, I believe, the public to see.
I support that as well, because I think there's enough things that don't fit in some of the other categories, so I don't know, do we have another asset management?
Can you give us some examples? Because the ones I'm thinking of, to that point, Mayor, I think they fit into the other priorities. So what are some of the other assets that you're thinking?
Well, again, the Halsey House, Redwood Grove, what might happen.
PCI,
So that's probably in the community safety, but.
And parks, that's also part of CAP.
Parks are part of CAP.
Yeah.
but then it also speaks to like improvements like Grant Park, Halsey House, and
Yeah, okay, Vice Mayor.
So I'm struggling with this one because when all is said and done, there's no question that asset management is one of the most important things that we do because our assets are the amenities that we have for the community and they provide the necessary tools and facilities for the city to conduct its business. At the same time, this is an area where we can say one thing, but ultimately, whether or not management of any given asset really matters depends upon whether we're putting it in the budget. I mean, you could have a list of 1,000 things as priorities, but what you're actually spending money on really says that's what your priority is. There are enough things that probably fall under the rubric of asset management, whether it's Halsey House or the Grant Park Community Center or new structures that maybe want to get built in downtown, that ultimately, whether we budget for them is going to tell the story of whether it was really a priority. So I'm not quite sure how to reconcile that.
Well, in the past, everything was done in the budget. I mean, none of being listed as a goal obviously doesn't rule us out from talking about it in the budget. We will by definition talk about it in the budget. So I don't see that they're mutually exclusive. Councilmember Liang, do you have another, your hand is up. I'm not sure if it's again or.
oh, sorry, I can't tell if my hand's up or not. So I meant to, I spoke
Okay.
already. Thank you.
All right, that's fine. So we're down to, so John, we're at what, about 6 items or?
Well, 4 or 5, depending on if you're gonna split public safety or public safety, police facility, public case. Power went out in my brain. Public safety facilities and community safety, you need to keep those in mind. So 4 if you even combine, 5 if you split them out.
I think we talked about splitting them out. And does that include asset management?
That does not include asset management. If you do include asset management, then it would be 6.
I think we've actually done a lot of cutting. And we're gonna look at this again. I say that we should keep asset management in for now. We've had the discussion. When we look at this after it's cleaned up, we can revisit that question and then I know you want to take us on to more detailed wording, which may or may not be applicable given the changes we've made. So let's, so is everyone okay with that? So we'll have 6 things because we have split out public safety infrastructure questions separate from community safety or whatever we're calling them now.
So are we putting public safety infrastructure as a standalone item, or is that no part of asset management?
No, I have it as a separate item.
So what are the 6?
So housing, community safety, public safety facilities, infrastructure, environmental sustainability, business communities, asset management. With a value statement at the beginning.
There's a very statement at the beginning.
Thank you.
Okay. I think, are we good for now? I mean, again, we're gonna take another shot at it. Do you want to take us through the words? Let's see if they fit
So,
now.
currently housing, City of Los Altos will support the creation of housing that is safe, diverse, and affordable for all income levels to meet the needs of the community. And will advocate for state legislation and funding that supports this goal.
I think we need to mention the housing element update. Because this to me, it's a little bit different.
As someone who has just joined the council, this is from before I joined, and it feels like a remnant of the way the council was previously constituted. And I get this vibe of the legislative committee and letters and, you know, traveling around the state and lobbying for stuff. And while all of those things are, I think, are within our individual rights, I think as a body, I'm more comfortable without that language in this item, and instead language that specifically says what we're going to do under the housing element.
Well, it's not a real language.
You're trying to look at me with eyes that are piercing.
Well, I do think so. If we're taking housing and land use together, our primary focus is going to be on implementing. I mean, we've got an 8-year plan now, and we're talking about the first year or two of implementing that.
But that's only part of land use, right? Because the other things that we're talking about doing are, you know, things that relate to business vibrancy in downtown as well. And they're kind of coupled and should be treated together, you know, in context. But we can't just have we can't just only have the housing element be under the umbrella of land.
Right, but business communities is a separate goal. We kept that one, so, yeah.
But I mean, land use, let's say, for example, we were talking about Redwood Grove, which is currently designated as a preserve. And it's anything but a nature preserve, it's a environment and should be redesignated. So there are other land use discussions to have that don't directly pertain to housing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's by combining housing and land use, we need to sort of make sure we keep the essence of land use in it. The housing element will give us a lot of guidance, but not all the guidance. I think that's a good point.
Maybe put up 2 there. So implement the programs and policies of the housing element update to support the creation of housing that's safe, diverse, affordable for all income levels. To meet the needs of the community, period, after community.
And the part of land use that could be valuable to keep is, you know, seek to increase and protect green space, because that's the other part of the land use that really isn't necessarily captured as much in the housing element. Oh, did you have that there already, or you just put it in?
Copying it from the land use.
Okay, yes, okay, good. And I don't want us to do too much wordsmithing. We just want him to capture our thoughts, and then he can clean it up before the next time we see it. And it's really not, I guess, picking up on what Councilmember Daley said. It's really, we're going to be capitalizing on all sources of funding. Forget about the state legislation, but we're going to take advantage of all sources of funding that support these goals. I mean, there's a lot of grants that are available, and that, you know, whether it applies to housing or it applies to green space. So what you just deleted would be.
If we want to keep it short, Mayor, we know the HE already talks about funding.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yes, it does. Right. We don't want to recreate the HEU. Yes, Vice Mayor.
I like this a lot.
Mhm.
My suggestion would be to add in, say that support the creation of housing that is safe, diverse. I'd like to add in equitable, sustainable, and affordable.
So, Councilmember Liang, this is, we're not getting this final, we're getting it in good enough shape for Mr. Maginot to bring it back to us with.
No, I think the improvements are good. Thank you.
Okay, good, thank you. Just wanted to make sure we had your, input. All right.
I'm going to save this before I.
Oh, good idea.
Oh, you can just watch the Zoom.
Okay.
I heard myself.
Then, we'll skip land use, fiscal sustainability, community safety would be the next one.
Right. So here we need to pull in complete streets.
Yes, because I know, I've heard that the transportation safety really didn't capture
Right.
what complete streets.
How about multimodal?
Multimodal. You're the, what do you
Yes.
say? No, I'm fine letting you be the expert, but you know, someone experts that, you know, transportation safety isn't broad enough.
Well, yeah, continuing. We're, so the Complete Streets Master Plan is city policy. So I think it would make sense that our goal here, that our objective here is a statement of what's the word I'm looking for? We're committed to implementing the Complete Streets Master Plan. So instead of continuing to implement plans and strategies, to implement the city's policy as expressed in the Complete Streets Master Plan and those plans which support its support it, yeah. Because we still do have a bunch of weird, I mean, there's a stop sign policy, there are all we have the circulatory elements. But I think just saying that,
Yeah.
note that they support the CSNP is probably enough.
But we still need to capture improving public safety, emergency preparedness.
Right, so it's like some sub bullets under the first. So Complete Streets Master Plan is one of the bullets, emergency preparedness and that is another bullet. And
Improving public safety.
yeah, improving. Public safety.
And I remember there were several members of our community last year that really wanted us to include in a responsive, equitable and
Yeah,
professional.
well, like we just included it in the housing one, we should include, again, maybe that's a value. So we don't have to repeat it in every goal. It really should be, again, that's an underpinning to everything we do. We created another value.
So what we're thinking is that equitable and sustainable is something that we're probably going to want to add to all 6 of our priorities. So it makes sense to include those as value rather than articulating it in each of the goals.
Let me check in with Councilmember Liang.
I think the second sentence where it says implementing the city's policies as expressed in the Complete Streets Master Plan and other plans which support, and then it should say which support improving public safety, transportation safety, and emergency preparedness. We're just eliminating that continue to implement plans and strategies part. Yeah. That'll be better.
Yeah.
So you're saying to delete these, delete this? We're gonna include it as part of the.
Well, and we said it in housing too. So I mean, the question is, if we pull it out, you know, and we want to say it applies to everything we do. Yeah, okay. So is this sufficient for him to take away and work on? Again, we get another, council member, your hand is
a leftover hand maybe, or?
Sorry, my hand was up. Sorry. Okay, thank you.
That's okay. I just want to make sure I don't miss it if you have something to say, okay?
And so the next one. Oh, no. Asset management.
Maybe,
this one.
yeah, I like this one, but I could also, it could use the clause, I don't know if it belongs at the beginning. Through the budget process, the city of Los Altos will set clear expectations. I mean, because really.
I like that because I think clear expectations was something I was struggling with. But that puts it in context.
Change
Where
it.
we go, excuse me, sorry, one more.
Yeah,
In
Councilmember.
asset management,
Yeah.
funding to support the maintenance. Okay, okay, no, that's okay, I won't change it, that's fine. Sorry.
Actually, I'm sorry, can you go back to?
It's very.
Yeah, it's a long sentence.
So, that are necessary to provide the quality of services and well-being of residents. Something's not right about that column. That are necessary to provide the quality of services.
Well, I mean, you could just delete that whole thing.
Yeah.
Just delete that are necessary all the way through the end. I mean, again, this is implied, we're not trying to provide services to do that.
Right.
So, Councilmember Liang, is this okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, all right. And then-
Simple is better.
Yeah.
Doesn't mention any new assets.
Well, that's gonna be a separate, oh, well. Well, I don't think it doesn't exclude them. Yeah.
If they're budgeted, then that's an asset that we're managing.
Well, then why would you have a sentence that implies that we're protecting and improving city facilities? If they're in the budget too.
So they have to get there somehow.
And I think because we're looking at the year ahead and our limited resources, the only acquisition would be captured in other,
How about a generator?
that's not.
It's gonna be budgeted anyway.
But like.
But-
Yeah.
That was on purpose, to show us how important the generator is. We're on to you. Yeah, we're good. Okay. All right, yes, go on, yeah.
Environmental sustainability.
And this is about CAAP, or it should at least mention it.
I think we should sort of maybe mirror the language we had
Yes.
on
Safety.
safety.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
And there's also good language, John, in the intro of CAP.
So, just as a time check for my colleagues and those are listening, including our city manager. So 6:51 is the 1 hour that we've allotted to this. So we're actually on track, I think, to get there. So I just, it hasn't even been an hour yet, city manager, so.
We'll do the dance at the end.
We'll do the dance at the end. Yeah,
Okay.
all right, go ahead.
This is, so, I think as the council has indicated, you want me to go and work in the climate action and adaptation plan language into the goal, so we'll do that. The next one is business communities.
Let's include the language of the downtown region.
Oh, yeah.
I have a quick question. When you talked about environmental,
Okay, let's go back one slide. Yes, Councilmember Liang.
so if we also intend to adopt the Mawendo, so we should, don't we want to also address Mawendo as well?
Well, we'll get to, when we go through future agenda items, where we'll look at that, and I think, I mean, it's hard to put that in a goal without having the discussion. But we wanted to have room to incorporate whatever sustainability type of actions. So I think that the point is that we make this, we're gonna make potentially make additional decisions, and we want this description to capture that possibility. Is that correct, Councilmember?
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Business communities.
I like this, I don't know.
Yeah. That says support, instead of being different, it's say Allen or the cities.
I like that.
Our business communities, yeah, or the cities, yeah.
Not Mountain View. Definitely
Good.
Yeah. All right.
Last one.
It's a new one.
Is a new one.
Oh, this one is good. Actually easy, because it's just one thing.
Okay.
I thought we were gonna call it public safety infrastructure.
Okay.
Well, I was gonna ask actually the city manager, what do you think we might want to phrase this? Neighborhood safety and infrastructure?
Yeah, I think, Mayor, depending on how broad the conversation goes, I do think going that direction would probably be helpful.
All right.
But I will say, I think it's important to the community to see the word public safety there in all honesty.
Yeah. I like using the word neighborhood. I think that's beneficial.
I'm picking up on that.
Yes.
But maybe in the language, not so, but maybe in the language, I think it's important to mention public safety.
In the words, potentially. Well, yeah, we'll see. Safety and infrastructure. Right. So, or is it-
In the description mentioned.
Yeah. Hey, Vice Mayor, did you want to repeat? Well, we're going to evaluate and develop strategies. I was saying we're going to evaluate and develop strategies to support funding and modernizing neighborhood safety and infrastructure.
Pursue. I like the word pursue much better than
Right.
evaluate.
John's gonna ask us to repeat what we just said, and that's not good. No, it's not, no.
Will pursue. Sorry, I was asking Angel to help me out.
Angel, did you get, we'll evaluate and assess, recommend.
We'll evaluate, assess, and pursue.
Mhm.
We'll clean it up later.
Neighborhood safety and infrastructure.
Strategies to address neighborhood safety and infrastructure needs
For the public safety.
for public safety. Again, yeah. Well, we're doing good, and this is the only one we're starting from scratch, so, hey, cut us a break.
You're doing great.
Yeah. Councilmember Daley, go ahead.
Government has this tendency to be so discursive.
What is the difference between evaluate and assess, and why are there two words there rather than one?
The things 3 times. Which one do you want to take out?
I think tonight, the understanding the themes is important. We'll come back with probably fewer adjectives, but
It could be evaluate, recommend, and pursue. Or assess, recommend. Okay, Councilmember Liang.
Don't you just want to call out the police station and the fire departments, because I think it's important that we just don't skirt around the issue and we just call it out as well and identify it.
Again, it's a council priority, but I would say if we're limiting our action this year only to police facility and we're not including generators or neighborhood yeah, well, I was trying to avoid that. It's going about the 28th. But setting up neighborhood watch groups, things like that, it depends. I guess we're saying if the purpose of this goal is to say we're going to bring forward a bond measure to look at a new police building and fire building, and that's it, that's all we're going to do. And to Councilmember Liang's point, we should be direct in that. If we're looking at this in a broader sense of community safety, emergency response, and neighborhood safety, then we would want it to be, I think, as broad as possible. And when we look at neighborhood safety, we're also bringing into things like the EOC, the work that our HAMs and our other groups do, updating our multi-hazard mitigation plan. So it just depends how broad council wants to be.
But we have to, I mean, we have community safety, so we don't want to be duplicative. If community safety was the broad goal, and then this is really about, the strategy to finance neighborhood safety infrastructure, then, so I don't know, it's up to you. Can we say, if we can say police and fire, we'll say it, but I
think if that's the goal and we want it to be that specific.
It's fine to put it in here, yes.
I think that was council's intent, that this was around that goal. Okay, Councilmember Fly.
So that's where I started as well, where the focus of this would be the reconstitution of the subcommittee and what your focus will be. And that's why I actually stayed quiet as we were framing this, because I'm deferring to you and the vice mayor to tell us the scope of the subcommittee, because I think that's what needs to be captured here. I do think there is value, however you describe the scope, in mentioning it could be including but not limited or such as, but I do think it's important to mention some specific things that you're thinking. So it doesn't limit you, but at least you're calling out police, because that's something I know.
So why don't, actually, so looking at this, it is neighborhood safety infrastructure, not the and I told you to put that in, so it's wrong. It's neighborhood safety infrastructure. And then maybe for now, we should put subcommittee's goal to drive this so that we can propose something. Okay, if that's all right with everyone. Councilmember Liang.
She's on mute.
I'm just trying to
We can hear you now. So the proposal
okay, yeah,
was,
it doesn't read right. It's just not.
right.
But if you,
Sorry, Councilmember Lee, I'm just taking.
oh, okay, the general idea. Okay, and then you're gonna bring it back. That's fine.
Right. Subcommittee's goal, yeah. So that's it. So the subcommittee will work with Mr. Maginot, and a proposal will come forward when the draft comes forward. Okay, so let's do that for now. And then does that accomplish what you needed? Right on the 59-minute mark. So that's good. So if you looked at the agenda, we're doing long item, shorter item, break, and then longer item, shorter item, wrap up. So this is in theory, a shorter item. So we're going to move to item number 3, which is to review our standing and ad hoc committees. Okay. And so who's going to tee that up for us?
You read it, Mayor?
If you would, thank you.
So the city council currently has 6 permanent standing committees. We've listed those in the staff report. We also have 1 ad hoc committee that is still doing work, and we're seeking reauthorization of that. So for tonight, we're asking council to review the standing subcommittees and affirm that you would still like those subcommittees to remain, or if you'd like them removed. And the second part is if you'd like to affirm the work of the ad hoc subcommittee, looking at the public safety, buildings, and infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. England. So let's do what I'm guessing are the easier ones first. So we have 3 school subcommittees. One with Los Altos School District, one with MBLA High School District, and one with CUSD and Fremont Union School District. So my suspicion is that we want to keep those. Does anyone disagree with that? Council, so we're all in agreement. See, I said we'd start with the easy ones. Okay. So the city standing subcommittees stay. The other one that I think is probably easy as well, Youth Commission interview. I assume we want to keep that. Does anyone disagree? All right, so we've got agreement on keeping the Youth Commission interview. So let's talk about Council Legislative Subcommittee. And I had not made assignments to this at the beginning of the year because I thought we needed to look at what we do and how we do it, and if we do it and why we do it. So I've not served on that committee. And as you all know, legislation is not necessarily my favorite topic. So I think someone else should start off the conversation. It looks like Councilmember Liang, do you have your hand up? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I feel that if we're going to get rid of the Council Legislative Committee, I actually feel it's important for us to obtain a lobbyist. I really feel that how we do things is not in the best interest of our residents to have our time work on this Council Legislative Subcommittee, but I think it's important to have one if we're not going to seek the support of a lobbyist, because I think there is so many bills to track. It's so many things that we need to stay up on and take positions on. And if we need to do that, it would be best if we had a lobbyist.
Okay, thank you. Other Councilmember Flagler.
Thank you, Mayor. And Councilmember Liang actually touched on the origins of this legislative subcommittee, because it's when Councilmember Liang was mayor that we decided to form the Council Legislative Subcommittee after having a couple of meetings discussing whether or not we wanted to hire a lobbyist. And that council at the time went through the pros and cons and whether or not it made sense for Los Altos to have a lobbyist. And that council determined for different reasons that it didn't make sense for us to have a lobbyist, but instead let's form this legislative subcommittee group to bring forward bills that we thought affected Los Altos and we wanted to deal with. And so my position from 3 years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, has not changed, where I really don't think for a small city with all the limited resources that we should be investing in a lobbyist. Having said that, and now that we've tried the legislative subcommittee for a couple of years, I'm wondering if we should go back to what we used to do before this discussion, which is 2 things. 1, we relied on the Cities Association. And 2, if there was really a bill, I remember former Mayor Pepper, if there was a bill that someone cared about, then they would bring it to the full council for discussion and ask whether or not you wanted to take a position on it versus having it go through a legislative subcommittee. So I do not support having a lobbyist, same position, my position hasn't changed. With regards to the legislative subcommittee, it's interesting, no one listed it as a high priority. As the legislative representative on the Cities Association, I can commit to you that I would bring bills forward and have council in its entirety weigh in before I voted at the Cities Association. So that's my thinking around whether or not we continue with the legislative subcommittee or another option.
Okay. Anyone else? Vice Mayor?
I'm in complete agreement with Nisa.
Okay. And actually, I am too. I just can't support for our city spending money on a lobbyist. I do think that there are things that are important, and so that we track and that we may want to weigh in on. And so I think Councilmember Fliger described it very well. And maybe because it's a logical connection that you made specific to yourself this year, maybe we should make a sort of an informal suggestion that whoever our cities association legislative delegate is, they fill that role, because you're following it anyway. So and so you're our it would make sense, whoever on an annual basis is doing that, keep us abreast. And then if each of us have an individual pet law to be, then we of course can bring it forward to that as we have been, and city attorney can bring something forward to be watched or whatever. So I would agree with that. Councilmember Daly?
100%.
Okay, Councilmember Liang, did you want to add something now that you've heard some of the other opinions?
Yeah, I did. And I think that normally annually we have a joint meeting with Los Altos Hills, and if we can have a discussion, because I know that sometimes cities association, many of the larger cities take control of the decisions that's being made, and it's not in the best interest of small cities. So when we do, or if we do have a joint meeting with Los Altos Hills, I think it would be wonderful if we could have a conversation. If both of us shared a lobbyist, that would be in the best interest of smaller cities like the both of us. I think it's worth a discussion having.
Okay, Councilmember Fliger.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm not sure what joint meeting that is, but I could, so for example, to Councilmember Liang's point, which is correct, that as a cities association with the 15 cities, like you would expect, majority votes would win, right? And so if there's a particular bill, majority of the council members from the different cities who vote in favor or against the bill, that would be the letter that gets drafted to the state, and the phone calls that we make in an in-person meetings. It would reflect the cities association's position. Having said that, hypothetically, let's say there's a bill that the cities association supports, but as a city, we don't. We can always, the mayor can always send her own letter, right?
Yeah, I don't think just because the cities association takes a position means that our legislative person would come back to us and say that we have to take the position. We have the ability within council to take the position that's right for Los Altos. But that legislative delegate to cities association would be informed and would tell us that, but we can have the discussion and make our own decision. So, I mean, to me, it makes sense to give this a try. I don't see how we can justify it to the community. I mean, no one's averse to having a chat with Los Altos Hills, but it's certainly not happened in my time on council. So I don't think it's an annual thing. But for now, it sounds like we agree that the Cities Association legislative delegate from Los Altos will serve as our cities will bring back to us items of interest, and that would probably make sense to do that in reports back, or to ask for it to be an agenda if it needs to have a broader discussion. So I think we have direction on that, right? Okay, so let's go on to open government then. And I don't know if city manager, you want to introduce it, or do you want me to? I can introduce it, because this
probably bears an introduction.
Yes, Mayor, I would defer to you.
Okay. Yeah. Can you train my husband? No. Just kidding, dear. I'm sure he's not watching anyway. So open government is interesting. Councilmember Weinberg and I are on that committee. We have not had a meeting, but open government largely became obsolete with the adoption of the housing element. And open government, we adopted a lot of the transparency measures and the ones, but essentially housing element has like story polls. We rescinded those last meeting. And there's other things like the broader notification, et cetera, that will go away as part of the housing element. So I think the vice mayor and I think that we can actually just recommend that if council agrees that this committee has outlived its usefulness, and then as I understand the process, yes, city attorney, would you tell us?
Oh, you can finish and then we'll bring back a resolution on consent formally rescinding the open government policy that was adopted by that resolution.
So that would be our recommendation. The other option is we could have a meeting where, you know, the open government committee has the discussion and then comes back with that, but it seems like it's basically moot in light of the housing element. So our recommendation would be that we bring forward the bring forward to rescind the resolution that put that in place. It was a pilot program, and anyway, I should let the vice mayor, if he wants to add something to what I have tried to say.
Thank you, Mayor. There's not a whole lot that I have to add, other than to say the open government policy was always intended to be a pilot program. The language of the policy itself says that it's a pilot program. There's no details as to how long it was supposed to go on. I think it was supposed to be reviewed annually. I don't remember it being reviewed since I've been on council. But the long and the short of it is like the mayor said, it's really outlived its usefulness. Some of the things that it mandates simply aren't appropriate anymore because the law has changed and our policies of the city have changed.
And anything that open government might have done can just come back to council as a whole if there's open questions and open issues. And so I think it was a good addition at the time, and it made us think a little bit differently about some of our practices, but it's a pilot that seems to be moot. So that would be our recommendation, and I would open it for any other comments. Councilmember Liang, Daley, Flagger. Do we need a motion or the direction?
I have a comment.
Okay, yes, go ahead, Councilmember.
I understand. Yes, I do believe that the story poll is gone, but there are some aspects of the open government that are important. We just got rid of community engagement as one of our priority. There are a lot more things that we need to work on and focus on in helping making sure that we are transparent in our intent of how we do our business with the best interests of the public, and making sure that they are aware of what's going on. There's the posting on neighborhoods when they do constructions, making sure all of that notification is in place. It's just an opportunity to make sure that we are looking at the public's best interest in getting information. And so if that's gone and community engagement is gone, I don't know, it just seems like we're sending a message tonight, and I'm not comfortable.
Thank you, Councilmember. That is not at all the message that we're trying to send. Community engagement becomes foundational to the work that we do. It's a standing value, as do the other things that we identified as such. The notification was actually one of the first things that open government did, the new placards that allow people to see the design of new projects that are coming, and I think that was an excellent one. But there's now nothing that's left to open government that council can't address as council as a whole. I mean, this whole council, all of us are committed to transparency. Open government, if anything, ironically, and it wasn't the intention of it, but actually didn't foster transparency because it was, you know, meetings that were held somewhere else at some time with, you know, not ideal notice. And so actually, I think the purposes of transparency are best served when the council has all, as a whole, addresses these questions together. So I think we have concurrence, not necessarily unanimity, but I think we know that you have the direction for bringing back the ability to repeal that resolution. Which only leaves us with the question, does the council agree that we should reauthorize the ad hoc subcommittee to research the ballot measure for public safety buildings and infrastructure? Question mark.
Strategic goal number 6.
Right.
I think we
Okay.
have direction on that.
I think we have direction. Okay, very good. So unless I've missed something, I think we've covered all of the items. So we will, that does take us to a 10-minute break. And so let's call it 13 minutes. So 7:07, 17, 7:20. We'll resume at 7:20. Thank you all. Resume. Perfect. Okay. So we're going to move on to item number 5, which is the review of our commissions. And Mr. England, did you?
Yes, Mayor, happy to kick this off. We've been through a couple of work plan submissions during my time here with the commissions and what council considers. And we also looked at peer cities in the county, how they operate as far as numbers of commissions, number of commissioners on the commission, and frequency of meetings. And the kind of common theme that developed was work plan submissions tend to be more formal in other cities, leading to a work plan that's based on council goals and direction, as well as the budget. And the total number of commissions, as well as the commissioners on each commission and how frequently they meet is derived by that work plan and what council is assigning for the year, as opposed to a set or standard number, which we have chosen to do here. So with that lead in, we're turning it over to council for discussion.
Okay. And so I think just set expectations for what we want to accomplish tonight. We want to talk about the information that we have in front of us, have some broad discussions about it. I think that that where we'd like to get tonight is just to the point where we give some direction to staff about potentially fleshing out some of the ideas that we come up with as we discuss the information in front of us. So this actually might be a good item. I don't know if anyone wants to ask some questions. This is less straightforward than some of the other ones. So first of all, do my colleagues have any questions about the information before we go to thoughts and discussion?
So can I get one clarification from staff? Beginning next month, what is the rule for the commissions when it comes to in-person meetings versus what can be done remotely? And what has staff heard from commissioners in terms of no longer being interested to serve if they have to come back to in-person?
So
And what flexibility do we have, if council wants to, what flexibility do we have to make it so that commissions can participate more remotely?
So answering the last question first, council can do whatever council desires. So you can add flexibility as far as how commissioners participate, as long as it's within the guidelines. So right now, the commission handbook doesn't allow any telephonic participation by commissioners, period. For commissioners to meet, they have to meet in person. Council could allow for commissioners to meet telephonically if they had a business trip, they were otherwise traveling. They could also allow commissioners to post the address of their property and they could meet telephonically or over Zoom, or they could comply with the new elements of the Brown Act, which I would have the city attorney explain. But for purposes of this conversation, and without going too far down that road, what we heard was a lot of excitement from most commissions and commissioners, but apprehension from individuals on commissions to commissioners. Individual commissioners said they would not serve on commissions any longer if they had to come back in person.
And does the council have the ability to take, other than statutorily required commissions, can we take any of our commissions and remove them from the auspices of the Brown Act?
No. They're legislative bodies as defined under the Brown Act. The only section in the new Brown Act, as we're calling it, under the 2449, it makes, it speaks to the legislative body. And then it also refers to a member. So there's the only where they're parsing out what the legislative body may or shall do if a member elects to use certain provisions under 2449. And the other thing that I should point out is under the existing Brown Act, it does state that the legislative body may use teleconferencing. So that one is a may, and it's at the discretion of the council. And that's why some cities have teleconferencing policy. And that is why when years ago, there was some commissions overusing or the teleconferencing, the council decided, and they put it in the norms or the commission handbook, that they stopped letting commissioners call in and teleconference. So, and there will be a memo, a public memo that's going to go out. I know you got a attorney-client memo, which went into a lot of the details, but we'll be sending out what the options are. But there's really only two options. And if the council, I should say, well, there's another option. If the council wants to set up a what we could call a remote site, then a council member or a member of a legislative body that, let's say we did it for council, they would have to come within under the new 2449. But we could, and if we do go under 2449, then that means we have to provide all of the telecommunications. But what I understand is the council's direction was the commissions will come back in person and the public would be appearing either telephone or by Zoom, like we're already done, but we're not providing that for the commissions or the council at this point, unless there's someone that wants to come within the old Brown Act or the new 2449.
Thank you.
To follow up on that, 2449 only allows for a finite number of times one can utilize it. Isn't that correct?
Yes, that's true. That's under the just cause or the emergency exemptions, and so.
All right. So at the moment, our expectation, and again, we will be looking at the handbook, is that the commissions are definitely Brown Act bodies, and they will be required to meet as bodies unless they fit under either the old Brown Act or the 2449 exceptions. Is that what?
Well, under the commissions, under the existing commission handbook, they cannot do teleconferencing. So, but that could all be changed, but you would have to give direction on that. And it's not on and all this is not on the agenda as well.
Mayor, could I just follow up and the vice mayor actually asked some of my questions, so thank you for getting us started. So city attorney, so I understand under the old Brown Act, body members could invoke the provision that allows you to meet remotely, telephonically, and or council years ago decided as part of our commission handbook not to allow our commissions to do that, correct?
Yes.
And I don't know if this is in the memo you're working on, but could you also share with us the steps that a commissioner would need to take if they were going to appear? I know we don't allow for it, but if they were to want to appear telephonically from home, what they would be required to do, the accommodations, the posting.
Yeah, you can answer, but we'd have to amend the
Yeah.
handbook.
So if the council were to amend the handbook, then if a commissioner wanted to appear by teleconference, they would need to notify their staff liaison ahead of time, at least 72 hours prior to regular meetings, so that it can be posted on the agenda. They would have to post a physical copy at their house or their location. And then during the meeting, that location would have to be open to the public, and any member of the public could come in and participate in the meeting at that location. They could not prohibit a member of the public from coming into, say, their home or place of business, wherever. And that would have to be open the entire time. If they're going to participate, if they're going to use the provisions of just cause, it's different as to what they have to do. And that's more for during the actual meeting itself.
And thanks for that, Mr. Masher. The reason why I wanted you to explain that is, for example, if a commissioner had concerns about COVID, and that was the reason why they didn't want to come back in person. If they're going to appear telephonically at home, they still have to open their homes. And so someone could still go into their homes to attend the meeting from that location. So I wanted to make sure people understood when they say, you know, because of COVID reasons, I prefer not to go back to in-person meetings. The law only really allows that. Okay.
The Brown Act says that the public has a right to appear, observe, and participate. And that is the fundamental of what a public meeting is all about. So if you're doing it at a hotel lobby or you're doing it where it's been posted, you cannot prevent people from appearing, observing, or participating.
Thank you. And then just one more question, Mayor. I know part of the discussion tonight is to determine whether or not we get rid of some of these commissions, merge some of these commissions, whatever we decide to do. But what is the plan if, for example, we decide to merge or eliminate one of these commissions? Would it be automatic tomorrow? I know this is a study session, but it would come back to council, or would it be a gradual transition for them to term out?
We can. Sorry, would you like me to?
I would think, Councilmember Flyer, it would depend on the commission, the commissioners, what the work plan was that we're currently working under. I don't know if we would propose one thing for everything. I think we'd want to look at a specific situation and bring back a recommendation.
And natural attrition could be one of the recommendations for some of the commissions, et cetera. So, yeah. Anyway, but it looks like Director Zorn.
I do just want to, at least because I think it's very important for us to at least acknowledge a little bit of the actual facts of the situation. So prior to July 1, when the new budget cycle started, 4 commissions were previously in my portfolio. So my department oversaw 4 of our main commissions. Since that time, it's now, or will be 2 effective within the next 45 days. But one of the things though that I do think that's a fundamental thing that's very important to be honest and transparent about is commissioners are not informing staff liaisons of their absence. And this is even with the flexibility of remote. So unfortunately, I do see us going to be running into, regardless of the fear tactic that I think has previously been acknowledged of not wanting to return to being in person. We're already having that. Last summer, we had to cancel about 4 to 5 commission meetings from lack of public or commissioner participation for a lack of the quorum. So that's something that needs to be a part of the conversation, or at least at the forefront of your mind when you're making the decision of whether or not we're going to do a hybrid for our commissioners. And it's very taxing on the very limited number of staff that we have that are overseeing these commissions that are very active. So I do just want to make sure that we at least acknowledge that, because it is a very big staff time to be able to try and make sure that we have folks that are not returning calls or emails, even just informing us.
Thank you for that point. So let me try to put a little framework around this discussion. So we've been posed 3 policy questions. We've had some interesting data in front of us and thank you. I know it took a lot of work to show us what each of the cities other than San Jose, which of course is huge and not a valid comparator. And thank you, Director Zorns, for that information as well. So the policy questions are, how do we want to think about commission work plans, and how do we want those to be derived? I mean, right now, it seems like they're really bottom up, which would be great if they were entrepreneurial companies. But it may or may not work so well in our process. So that's one question in front of us, is the work plan. The other policy question is, so what about the commissions, the nature of them, and the number of, the frequency of meetings, the number of commissioners, and the number of total commissions. And so one statistic I just want to pull out that really struck me is, yes, we have more of everything, more commissioners, more frequency, and more meetings than pretty much all the other cities comparators. We also have 79 commissioners, and we have 125 full-time FTEs with the city, but that includes PD and maintenance services. And so if you actually subtract out the 35 to 40 FTEs and PD, and then I don't know how many are maintenance services, we may actually have more commissioners. In fact, we probably do have more commissioners than we do office staff, office-based staff. So, as I looked at all this data, it was informative, to the discussion we're going to have. And then lastly, as we think about the nature of the commissions and their work plans, then that will of course drive changes to the commission handbook. We talked about the commission handbook at our last meeting. And so obviously there's going to be some big changes that come out of this meeting, the last discussion we had, and discussions about attendance, et cetera. So we'll definitely be driving changes to become commensurate with what we talk about. But I just, if we bring the discussion back towards that direction, and so first of all, I actually want to point out that it's really council's responsibility to have provided direction on the work plans. And certainly in the now just over 2 years that I've sat on council, we get the work plans, the commissions talk about them, and we provide no input. We make no attempt to marry it to the budget or our priorities or anything else. So it's really the fact that we haven't built into our process our responsibility to help the commissions understand what they should be doing. And I think another important point in the staff report is, what does the municipal code define that some commissions should be doing, when it defines anything? And, because that's kind of the minimum, the base load of what those commissions have to be doing. And then the other commissions don't really have much definition at all, other than provide advisory input. And so in the case of a vacuum from council, a vacuum in direction, the commissions, of course, are following their passions. We have, brilliant, dedicated commissioners who could be running entrepreneurial companies and, doing these kind of things. But we have to do our job and help them, help really define what we're looking for each commission's commission to do. So, and the other thing, and you know, we've seen this terminology that I'm about to use applied against about a council in our county. The term I'm thinking of is councilmanic interference, which is when councils direct staff. They go around the city manager and they direct staff. Well, I think we have some commissioner manic interference, which I don't think is a term, but maybe it is now. You know, so we are not supposed to be going directly to staff and giving assignments, nor should commissioners be. So we really have an opportunity here to clarify expectations, both directions, and to make this work better for the commissioners, because they'll feel, I think, more rewarded if they're seeing the direct connection between what they do and what we do. And that's how it should be. So if we can really focus on now thinking about the work plans and the commissions themselves, I think that's where then we can give direction to staff and they can come back with some potentially fleshed out recommendations based on the discussion. So I've monopolized more than I usually would. So I want to turn it over to someone else for input. Vice Mayor.
Do you want to have two separate discussions, one about the work plan and then one about the structure of commissions, or do you want it all at once?
Actually, I think two separate, probably, because the work plans is kind of a discrete topic. And so let's do that. Let's take work plans first, since that was policy question number 1. All right.
So it seems to me that everyone would benefit by having sort of a standard form of a work plan, so that when council wants to look at them, understand what the commissions are doing, it's easier for us. And I think it's going to be easier for staff and probably the commissioners as well. They're not going to have to reinvent the wheel, or when there's turnover, try to adjust a style into a style that was adopted by a prior iteration of a commission. And it seems to me, I think I agree with the way that you framed everything. The best direction that I think we can give to the commissions is your work plan ought to be structured in alignment with council priorities and the budget. Because that tells the commissions and the community what it is we're planning to do, what it is we want to do. And I think that's where we're going to get the most important and salient input from the commissions. I think that there is a lot of really good input that the commissioners can get, both from their interactions with the community and from their own deliberations. But it will be a lot more rewarding for them and useful to us if it's directly relevant to what it is that the council is doing over the course of a year.
More comments?
I'll go if nobody else is ready. So for me, the work plan will depend on the commission, because there are some commissions, for example, the Complete Streets Commission, that I know actually looks at our priorities, and when they put together their work plan, they have tied it to the Complete Streets Master Plan that we've adopted. Similarly, with the Environmental Commission, they look at the CAP and all the things in the CAP that we've adopted that they want to work on and form subcommittees. I will say, and you'll notice that a lot of these smaller cities have more commissions. And I think that's a product of commissions over the decades being formed to be a support, like extra additional resources to support staff on certain topics and issues. And so for me, having the Complete Streets, and I could go through the commissions because I framed it differently, certain commissions developing their work plan tied to our priorities makes a lot of sense. When I think of commissions like Public Arts, Parks and Recreation, that 4 of us have served on, they're a little bit different because they're more community focused, where they're planning activities and doing activities and engaging with the community and making suggestions to staff. And if staff isn't able to support it, then they would form a subcommittee and carry out that function. I remember when I was on Parks and Rec as well, Manny, who was the liaison back then and is back to being the liaison now, there would be recreation programs like the fun run and other things that he would ask us to volunteer. And so we would also support city events, recreational programming and events as part of our role on the Parks and Rec Commission. So for the public arts, for some of these commissions, it's really hard to pigeonhole them and say your work plan has to tie in with or goals, because I think their role is different. Now, if the goal is to make sure that we don't have runaway commissions and we're making sure whatever they plan to do for the year, it aligns with our staffing resources, and it's something that we can support, then I think that's, for me, that should guide their work plan. Like when they sit down, maybe have some kind of approval by the staff liaison to say, okay, you want to do these 10 things, and we know many of our commissions want to do a lot, and we appreciate it. But really, these are the only 2 things we can accomplish this year. And I think that's the kind of interaction we need to have with our staff liaisons and commissions in figuring out the work plan. But for me, I would not say your work plan, because it depends on the commission, has to directly tie to our goals that we establish.
Go ahead, Councilmember Daly.
I think some commissions don't need work plans. I don't think the Public Arts Commission needs a work plan. It's not really what they do. And I would differ with my colleague on council about the Parks and Recreation Commission. Having been through the work plan process 4 times, the time that was most effective was when we took the CIP and council priorities and set them down on the table side by side and said, our work plan is going to reflect these things. But that said, there are things that the commissions do, particularly Parks and Rec, as you mentioned, that are not part of the work plan, but are part of what they're expected to do, which is to say, you know, volunteer at the city booth at the farmer's market, or do volunteer at the movie in the park, or things like that. And that's all fine. We can have those expectations for commissioners, but I do feel strongly that where a work plan is appropriate, the process should be guided by the staff liaison, not by the commission or the chair, but by the staff liaison, and it should directly reflect the priorities of council and the CIP. And yeah, that's what I have to say about the work plan process.
So I'm going to tag on to that because I do feel that the work plans tie in directly to the budget. So we've had examples where commissions are working on things that are not, you know, in the next couple of years budget. So why? You would ask why. So my proposal when thinking about it was that each year after we adopt the budget, the staff liaison has the responsibility to work with the commission to develop a work plan that is directly based on the budget. And so then you mentioned the master plans. The master plans are largely roadmaps for staff, not the council. I mean, not the commissions necessarily. So if you look at a lot of the plan, you know, so one of the public comment plans that came to us, the work plan is highlighting what staff is going to do. And so I think that's a concern when, you know, what role does the commission have with the plan once it's finished? It's not implementation necessarily. I mean, there's circumstances where it should be. We could decide it should be implementation, but the plans are driven by staff. So I think we have to be careful. If you look at some of the really detailed plans, aren't they laying out staff's jobs? So, and you know, so yes, go ahead.
I just want to say that there is conflation of staff responsibility and commission responsibility over and over again. It happened on the commission on which I served, and I've seen it now in my brief time having an opportunity to liaise with other commissions. And I've talked to the city manager about this, and I think that it's a critical issue, that one of the things that we have to solve tonight. I think that with very, very few exceptions, you don't want to see the word implementation in a work plan for a commission. They should leave implementation to the people who are paid to implement policy. And I think that for me, the fundamental purpose, excluding, statutory commissions of the planning, commission, the fundamental purpose of the commission is to act as a catalyst for community engagement. And the best example that I can think of would be when we did, our dog park engagement. One of the ways we helped council and staff was by being a buffer. Because there are times when the public is really emotional about particular topics that get taken up. And I think the commissions do a great job sort of absorbing that a little bit. And so I think that community engagement is job number one as a commissioner. And then job number two is to advise council on the things that council is asking for advice on, not on the things that you just happen to be passionate about because you're a commissioner. Yeah.
And I don't.
Yeah, so Councilmember Fliger, but we'll go to Councilmember Liang after you to check in with her.
So I just wanted to follow up on what you said, Mayor, about adopting plans and then moving to implementation. I strongly believe the commissions play a key role between adoption and implementation. I think we need to tighten how they work on elements of these plans where, maybe it's council directed or staff directed to say this portion of the plan, we really appreciate your expertise, environmental commissioners, having the community engagement, having workshops, doing, a subcommittee that really delves into it. But I value the commission playing this role for different elements. We talk about it all the time, we're short-staffed when it comes to staff resources, but I also think these commissioners bring a different level of expertise and I appreciate their input. I completely understand that there needs to be stricter and clearer guidelines on what they look at and what they're expected to do. But in no way do I think it's solely staff's responsibility to take it from us. I do think the commissions, Complete Streets Commission, the Environmental Commission, clearly the Planning Commission, have a role to play in helping us implement these plans we're adopting. And it's just for us to figure out how to provide the right guidance to them in doing so.
Right, well, definition, I think, is the key here. And I should say, and then I'll turn to you, Councilmember Liang. Both the commissions I served on, Design Review and Planning Commission, are two that have very well defined. We never had work plans because you just do the work as it comes in. It's very clear what it's going to be. And the work plan was essentially do what Nick tells us, or whoever it was at the time. So it was pretty clear. So Councilmember Liang, we haven't heard from you.
Yeah, I do agree with some things that I concur with what you said earlier, Mayor. I am concerned that with the two commissions that we that already have plans, we also have our hiring staff to implement those plans. And then it kind of seems like we're going to have the commission micromanage the staff when it should be the city manager directing the staff, and the staff can ask for input when necessary as required by the plans. So I guess my question would be to the city manager in getting some clarity on what further feedback we've heard from staff on how this would hinder implementation of these plans.
Councilor Liang, are you talking about the master plan specifically?
Well, like the CAP and the complete street master plan, yes.
So I think just using one as an example that we're working with right now on the CAP, that master plan, and we've heard council talk about the valuable role that commissions play in that. Staff is bringing forward a recommendation for reach codes that'll come to council in April. We drafted our recommendations based on what was in the CAP and council policy. We took that to the Environmental Commission last week, I believe, and they improved it. They looked at things that we hadn't considered. They looked at things that they had a special expertise in, and they improved that as it came back forward to council. And that's an appropriate way to implement a master plan, is after council is given direction, the staff then determines the allocation of resources, how we're moving forward, brings that to the commission to determine if this is something they want to advise the council on, if they want staff to keep working on it, if there's certain specific areas maybe we overlooked or focused too much on, that all comes out at that commission level. So I think the primary issue that we get is the fewer or the less defined a work plan is, the higher the likelihood of role confusion exists. So when we talk about the commissions that tend not to have this, the planning commission, that's because their work is very well defined. Staff knows how to interact with that commission very well. The further you get down, if we look at this as a tier system away from very well defined plans, you get greater role confusion. You get staff at commissions that may be unclear on council direction. We may start working on things, we being staff or the commissions, that aren't in the budget. It's maybe something we're interested in. So I think when we talk about work plans specifically, I haven't heard anything that couldn't go in a work plan. Parks and Rec Commissioner, as part of their work plan, could be expected to work on events, as an example. What we don't want is a commission creating something that then they have to implement themselves, staff has to implement, or you have to go back and get council permission for it because it wasn't tied to that direction. That was a very long answer to say I actually think the master plans provide a good example of how commission, council, and staff can work together appropriately with less role confusion.
Is that the generation, the producing of a master plan, or after? What happens after the master plan?
Well, so I do think with the master plan specifically, once council has adopted it, the work on the commission at that point has been completed as far as the master plan itself exists. If council gives specific direction on items to work on first, then we would work on those first. Otherwise, we would implement them as we have the resources, the staffing availability. Implementation is up to staff. Bringing it to the commission to improve that recommendation and advise council, that's solely the purview of the commission, and we understand that.
If needed.
Well,
I mean, because if you have a newly adopted master plan, then in theory, I mean, as it gets older, it probably makes sense to bring things back and check and make sure they're still.
And that's a good point. There are certain things that in either complete streets or the CAP that wouldn't come back to a commission or council. Staff has direction. We do that. We understand how to implement that. Other items may come back as a check-in. It may come back as a resolution and ordinance again, but I think staff is probably best of the three bodies, the best body to determine how to bring that back forward, with the exception of if council has said, here's your CAP, adopt the reach codes, and then move on to items 2 and 3. But it's not a perfect defining line. You cross into each other's areas. The goal is to cross into each other's areas fewer times than we do today.
The commissioners and council members shouldn't be giving direction to staff other than in this type of forum. Councilmember Liang can continue. Did that help?
Yeah, that helped a lot. So thank you, City Manager Grabe, Mr. England. I really appreciate it. I think that makes things a little bit clearer for me. And I guess my next question would be then, earlier, I think they stated that staff would come back with some recommendations and suggestions. Did I hear that correctly, or?
So, Councilor Liang, I think that's how the mayor framed it at the beginning, and what staff is looking for is if we have consensus now on the 2 items we're discussing, to allow staff to come back with recommendations to council, either on work plan adoption as one, or if we want to look at the frequency of meetings as an example, or the overall number of commissioners.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mr. England, I just wanted to clarify something you said about the types of things commissions would work on. And I'm going to use Public Arts and Parks and Rec Commission as the examples that I know do this. They will have their own events. They'll have a show. Back when we had the Downtown Green, they would organize an activity. And I know from experience and other commissions, we would staff it ourselves. So there's a limited role for city staff to play there. And it's something that they're trying out to see if this is something the community would enjoy. And sometimes they're just doing it once. And I just want to make sure it's clear that we want that. We want to encourage these commissions to do that. Clearly stating, we don't want to go over to the operational side or the city programming side, but I would really support making it clear to these commissions, we want them to do these types of activities because I do think it's good for the community. It's good for these commissioners. I know most of them enjoy it. And so I want to make clear that that could continue based on what you said.
Yes, Councilmember Flagger. I think in other communities I've been and have a sticking with the Parks and Rec example, have a Parks and Rec Commission that does that. I do think there's value in it. Again, as long as we have it in the work plan, so we understand ultimately, even if it's staffed by the commission, staff is supporting that. So we need to make sure we have the proper resources, the proper people to support that event as it moves forward. But I do think, yes, that could be a valuable continued role of the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Yes, Councilmember.
I wanted to offer an example of something that I think commissions that we're trying to control for, rather than talk about what they're doing well. An example from the Parks and Rec Commission. I, in particular, as well as a number of other commissioners, we need to take up Grant Park. We wanted to get into planning. We were talking about potentially a gift from a resident that might have involved, that might have funded bocce ball courts. And we were talking about, well, let's just not do this on an island. Let's look at all of the needs at Grant Park and come up with a coherent plan and get community involvement. Now, intrinsically, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. But there was no money in the budget for any of the things that we were talking about planning, and it wasn't part of the early years of the CIP. And no matter how much we wanted to do it, it was inappropriate for us to put that into our work plan. So it's those kinds of things that we want to prevent.
Yes, everything you said just caused an alarm bell in my head. I think tying specific, so programming is more fluid, events are more fluid, but when we start talking about infrastructure, parks, things like that, for us to plan effectively, that has to be part of the capital budget or the operational budget. You'll see it with the dog park. Another really good example, after the outreach was done and council provided direction, made a decision. Now the planning element, the implementation is running through staff with all of the outreach and the public meetings happening at the Parks and Rec Commission. Parks and Rec Commission, I promise you, whatever we bring to them, they'll make better. They'll look at things we did, and then from there, it'll go to council.
So in the staff report, the commissions were put into 3 different buckets. This is on page 23 of the PDF or page 3 of the staff report on this item. And those buckets were the commissions with powers specifically defined in the municipal code. And then the second tier, if you want to call it, was advisory capacity with additional direction. And the last was other commissions that were functioning in only an advisory capacity. So looking at the first bucket, Planning Commission, Historical Commission, and Design Review, we already have said through the housing element that Design Review Commission and Planning Commission, the roles and responsibilities will be melded. So, and then, and again, as we've said already tonight, there's really not work plans, at least for Planning Commission, because it's need driven. So as things come through, I don't know if does staff want to make
So Historical Commission, I've only represented this year and they've only had one meeting, so I don't have a depth of experience on it, but what I think these buckets get at, and I would like to see more detail on, is what is prescribed currently that these commissions must do. And then the next step is, and what other things might we want them to do? And that really helps us understand the right sizing and the meeting frequency, and then the number of commissions. I mean, as I've listened to the discussion, I do feel that we have an awful lot of 7-member commissions that maybe should be 5-member commissions. That would make our recruiting actually much easier. But in terms of the meeting frequency, would come out of a bottoms-up approach. Well, I shouldn't use that because we're trying to get away from that in a work plan, so I don't want to confuse the issue. But in terms of looking what's required that the commissions do, that would help us understand meeting frequency, and then what else we might layer on in terms of what we think we might want them to do. Because I don't know that I feel prepared tonight to make recommendations, though I do suspect there are commissions that do not need to meet every month. Well, I'm more than suspecting, I know that. So in order to answer the frequency question, we really kind of need to say, here's what they need to do, and here's what might be nice to have. And regardless of that, probably a lot of them, I mean, Planning Commission has to stay at 7. They're actually going to have an increased workload. It's one of the few commissions that maybe will have more to do. But if that's the goal, if you want to outline a possibility for each commission, what do you need from us tonight that you may or may not have already gotten out of this conversation?
So Mayor, the first part of the discussion was very helpful, and I do think we can come back with items around work plan and time powers, so that works. I think at this stage, if there is agreement on council that we should look at all or any of the items in the second policy question, we could come back with recommendations after specifically engaging the chair of the commission, the staff liaison, talk about what it is they're trying to accomplish, knowing that the council make that recommendation back, probably at a study session, I would guess.
I personally think we should look at all of it, because then we're better prepared to decide, all of it being the number of the frequency of meetings, the number of commissioners, and the number of commissions. Is the one that strikes, the other one that strikes me, we've talked about merging planning, and we know we're merging planning and design review. Public arts might fit nicely with Parks and Rec, or potentially library. I've heard of that as well. So what are the remits? Because for some of these, we can spell out more clearly what the remits are of the commission. So Councilmember Liang, did you have, I'm not sure if I see
Yeah, I
it.
had another question.
Yes,
or
go ahead.
Clarifying question. As this comes back for another study session, at that time, will the amendments to the handbook come back at the same time so we can try to look at everything, or will that be another separate study session?
So, Councilor Liang, I think we can bring back any edits to the handbook that are universal. Some items we would maybe wait for specific discussions to take place, depending on the direction we got from council. But there's certainly items in there that we're prepared to take council or have council direction on, and are prepared to make recommendations on as well.
Thank you.
One thing that we don't have in this report tonight, and I think makes sense to come after we have some of these discussions, the next study session, is then the role of the council liaison. What does that look like after whatever sort of tweaks we make to the commission? So I don't want to lose that. We haven't included it tonight, but I think it's premature to talk about it. But it would be good to flesh that out when the time is right as well. Do you actually have enough to go on?
Mayor, I think we have direction.
Yeah, Councilmember
I want to
Daly.
add one thing,
Yeah.
and it doesn't necessarily fit under these three policy questions, although maybe sort of halfway under number two. I think we need to change the rules around the quorum and what it takes to carry a motion in council. We've already, commission. We've already heard that we have some absenteeism. Right now, my understanding of the rules is to carry a motion, you need a majority of the members seated. So if you have a 7-member commission and you have 6 people seated, you still need 4 affirmative votes to carry a motion. But a quorum is a simple majority of the members. So you have a quorum when you have 4 people show up for a meeting, although you just can't carry a motion unless you get a unanimous vote in that situation. We could change that portion of the rule and say that a motion carries with the majority of the commissioners present, provided there's a quorum.
I don't even think we can change that.
No, I don't think we can change that. There's some rules for general law cities, what action to be taken. And so you need I'm gonna double check, because I do know that if it's going to be an action for the payments of money, some other actions, that it requires a majority of the full body. And this was changed, I would say, within the last 10 years, because it wasn't clear about the action needing a majority, and it says the entire body. No, I'll double check on that, but
Please do, because a lot of the things the commissions do don't involve that.
But to take a final action, I'll double check on that,
If
because
they're voting a recommendation up to pass along to council, maybe there are ways that we can tweak the handbook, because that rule's in the handbook, right? Maybe we have some latitude there that would reduce the burden of absenteeism, make it a little bit easier to conduct the business, despite the fact that we do have.
but right now, I'll double check, but right now, the rule is to take any sort of action, even if it's a recommendation, it would be the majority of the full body. So if you've got 4 people and that's a quorum, and you're going to make a recommendation, you need all 4, a 3-1 won't pass, or, The other issue is when you get tie votes, you have 6 people there and it's a 3-3. A lot of times, that's just a failed motion, and it goes up to the next body as a 3-3 failed motion. And if I'm there, I usually say we should put in the staff report why it ended up being a tie. What was essentially the deal breaker between why you couldn't get consensus? So the next body up knows why. So, but I'll look into that some more. But I mean,
How do we do that in action minutes, though? How do you put a comment on why we couldn't achieve consensus?
no, the staff would put that not in the action minutes. The staff would put it in the staff report.
I just want to say, I don't really support that. I understand the intent and appreciate that, but I don't think for planning commission,
You can't just have some lesser number that then ends up being decided by less than the quorum of the commission. I think that's, and so then if you can't do it for planning, then are you going to have different rules for different commissions? I mean, maybe you could decide that, but yeah.
No, I agree with everything you're saying, Mayor, and I know the city attorney is gonna double check. But, and going back to what Mr. Zorin said about attendance, I think that's something we need to address.
Yes.
Because I think it ties into why Councilmember Daly is trying to come up with a solution. And I wanted to clarify something based on the direction I think we are giving the city manager. So tonight, Mayor, we're not discussing or making recommendations about if we think a particular commission should meet every other month instead of once a month. We're not doing that tonight.
I don't.
I didn't get the impression we were based on the summary that they did.
So it is up to the council. I did think the direction we were seeking is allow us to come back and make recommendations and talk specifically with the chair of each commission.
I mean, if you have recommendations you want to throw out there.
Well, I mean, I can't prepare for that, but if that's
Oh.
not where the council wants to go and it's premature for staff, then, you know, my notes will keep.
Yeah, and I value what the mayor and the city manager are saying about talking to the chairs. I do think
yeah.
they should be part of this discussion.
I think that is an important step, yeah. So if you have sufficient direction, then I guess we'll call that a wrap, and then the intent is this would come back to a standalone study session at some point when appropriate. So probably sooner rather than later, but
And we have some ideas already, and we've already had some preliminary conversations, so we'll bring it back as quickly as we can.
okay. Good. Well, thank you all for that discussion. Oh,
30 minutes.
well, we're trying to catch up from the power outage. Yeah, I know. We're doing we might be back on schedule despite the power outage. All right, so the next item is item number 6. So we're going to look at future council agenda items, and the whole tentative calendar is included in the package. So technically the whole tentative calendar is fair game, but I think the focus of the discussion is really to look at the last 2 pages, which are essentially a parking lot for at the end of meetings, when we all throw out an idea and we make it one other supporting, so it's a council driven discussion, or maybe 2, and then in theory it stops. But some of these have been on here longer than I have, I think. So we're going to go through each one, and even if it had 3 or 4 members supporting it, we're going to check in tonight, to reconfirm. So we're looking for, again, 2 items would mean a council-driven discussion, and 3 items mean it's potentially a staff report. Now, of course, as I said, if there's anything else on the tentative calendar, but I glanced over that and it looked reasonable, but I want to give my colleagues a chance to look at the whole tentative calendar before we get into the parking lot discussion. Yeah.
The only thing I want to bring up is that under the December 5th, 2023 meeting, the annual comprehensive financial review is the wrong acronym.
Are we doing the CAFR on this council reorganize? You said
It's not the, it's not the,
No, it's the
not the
first
same.
one, the 12th.
Excuse me, the 12th, excuse me.
Yeah.
Okay. You're giving me an extra week. All right, internal jokes here. Sorry, folks. All right, so I don't know if you want to project that. Right up. Okay, good. And that's 2 pages. Anyone following along in the packet? It's the parking lot is page 53 and 54. Last 2 pages of the packet. That's right. All right. Well, the first one, I think it's done, isn't it? So proposed city policy from level of, changing from level of service to VMT, and we just did that, right? Or am I not? Yeah, so that's done. All right, aren't we efficient? Strong start. Okay, that's gone because we've taken care of that. League of California Cities role and representation. It says council initiated. But I don't remember what we were asking.
No, I think Councilmember Liang was the.
Councilmember Liang, do you have any recollection?
Well, that wasn't it. That was about, we really needed to understand the dues, whether they're really doing their job and representing our concerns, and whether we want to continue to be part of the League of California Cities, and, whether it's worth it, the investment we're placing in it.
So are you still interested in that item and are you looking for one or two others to support you in that?
Yeah, I think it's important to have that discussion and it would be good to hear from a member of the League of California Cities to speak on that and what they can do for us.
Okay, do we have a second person for council initiated discussion?
I'm okay with having someone from Cal Cities come and just let us know what they're doing and what they give to the community. I'm not interested in a discussion about whether we should stay with Cal Cities. I mean, that doesn't make sense to me.
Thank you, Mayor. So as you know, I serve on the board for the Cal Cities group. And I'm actually going to a meeting at the end of the week. So I'm happy to ask if someone would be willing to do that. I think we're better served if what we're looking at is what the vice mayor is requesting. If we just have a list of questions, they have this, they can answer these questions for us, give us a description of the services they provide and the value they add for cities like ours. I will say, and I can't remember the number, but it's only less than 5 cities in our state that are not a member of the League of California Cities. And the League has been around since the 1800s, right? And they're well respected in Sacramento. We want to be part of the League. It's very valuable. So if council really has questions, I can find out, or I could see if someone could set or someone could come. I just wouldn't want to put them through. I don't think it will be well received if it comes across as if we're questioning.
Interviewing them.
Right. So, but if there are specific questions you have, I know they will be happy to provide that if it's not already on their website.
Right, I mean, I don't know that we want to spend, I mean, usually people come and give a presentation and they're going to spend a half hour presenting, whatever it is we ask them to present. Do we really want to spend half an hour at a council meeting listening to something, you know, December 5th?
No, the 12. The 12.
I don't think it'll take a half an hour. I think it'll be 15, 20 minutes, and I think it's an education for everyone.
It might already be on the website.
I think it is, and I don't want it to come across.
So, Councilmember Flagger, maybe you would just look and see, and then we can get that, because I'm not about to question our membership. I think it's valuable, so. So you will get back to us. So who's who's recording what we're saying? Okay, good. I wanted to make sure I didn't have to. Okay.
Or we can watch the Zoom.
Watch the Zoom. No, please. Angel's taking notes. Okay, thank you. Good. All right. Subcommittee on Grants. Nisa Flagger, Mark.
We hired 2 awesome people. We're good.
All right, that's gone. Yay. All right. Yes, comprehensive.
Is this, is this your topic? Environmental privacy?
No, that would be, public works.
Could be engineering services. That's the subject. Comprehensive multimodal traffic study.
It's Jim.
Yes.
But if it's you, did we ask, but there's no council member who asked for it?
So Mayor, some items on here, if you'll see PCI report, they're items that we'll put on to remember that we have to schedule.
Okay. Okay, so that's a reminder that should stay there. I don't know if we want to categorize different buckets, but okay. And the same applies to PCI report. Did I hear you say?
Yes, the Public Works Director won't let me tell you how much our PCI increased, but he did tell me that the PCI report is coming.
Oh, I love those reports.
He won't let me tell you how much, but yes.
Okay, so actually a lot of these, we can go to the staff ones, funding mechanisms for housing and housing programs. What's that?
There's the subsequent housing element implementation schedule.
Right, okay, so.
Specifically,
Okay.
like 5 different ones, so we'll accomplish it on a different table.
All right, open government, we've addressed, a resolution will come, or a resolution rescinding the resolution. Okay, so that's addressed. Okay, Moendo, so, Councilmember Liang, do you want to talk about Moendo?
Yeah, the Moendo is the water reach codes. So that's something that we all agreed that we want to pursue. And I believe that the Environmental Commission is on board to support that as well and to work on that.
Mayor,
Am I mistaken?
the item is with the Environmental Commission, right?
Okay, it's with the commission, so that can come off this list as well, unless you need it as.
No, it needs to stay on the list because it needs to come to council and we need to calendar it.
Yeah, so where I'm struggling is this list of things that are coming. It's not necessarily the things it's not all we propose things but let's keep going through it. So sorry for my confusion. Okay, so that's coming. What does Moendo stand for? Municipal Water?
It's model water efficiency. Indio.
All right, good. That was pretty good. I'm impressed. All right, dark skies ordinance.
Dark skies ordinance.
Councilmember Liang proposed it and
Yes.
Mayor Enander and I supported her request. So I'll have
It's-
her.
It's a similar ordinance that Cupertino and Los Altos Hills has. And it is about light efficiency as well as protection of our wildlife due to how we provide some rules on lighting and
Right, okay.
I'll be number 3 on that.
Okay, so Vice Mayor has become number 3, so that's still on our list. So the date would be updated to today's date, then I think. City clerk, right? Okay, got it. Update to personnel rules, HR, that sounds like something you guys will bring forward. Okay.
And you'll see we've changed the format here, so you can see how this is a living document. Now, at this point, we've started putting, if it was council initiated or staff, and where we think it goes.
Okay, good. So that's okay. Cities Association, JPA. So as this year's representative, when there is something to bring forward, I will bring forward. I don't have an update on timing, but it will come. So, all right.
I think Mayor, can I clarify that?
Yes,
I think we need a better understanding of what direction the cities association is going on that and not just come back to us just when to make a decision. I think we need to know the status of their discussions. I think that's important.
Right, but there is no status yet. The city attorney has a comment.
The way the cities associations will be bringing the JPA forward, it will go to all the cities. And at that time, the cities can either join or not join, but there's no obligation for cities association to ask the individual cities for their input on that JPA. It's their document. And so I think it's not up to us to tell them to enter into a JPA or not. It will be, and I don't like to say it this way, but it will be, this is the JPA, these are the terms, these are the obligations, and the cities can either join or not join, or if there's something that we want to put, say that we object to a certain section or something, we might be able to do that, but it's really not our document at this point. So
Right, but I think clarity, point of order is that when they decided to have that discussion to whether to move forward on having a discussion to join the JPA, that has never came forward to us.
And I'm saying that it wouldn't, so let's get out of this discussion.
So I will keep the council updated in what I hear progressing regarding that. And so far, it's nothing that I'm aware of. I'm not on the executive committee. So, okay, compassion training, former Mayor Enander was on there, so we need a second or more.
Councilmember Liang, do you want to make your case for that?
Or I strongly believe that's important, just as we've felt that racial bias training was important, and I just think it's equally as important. So I think I've spoken to this before, and I think it's helpful in other cities and other, and it's proven to be successful. So I'm just gonna advocate for it again.
Okay, so to actually do the training, which I think we're not looking, one other person would support having this discussion about the training. Is that what we need to have if we had a second person? Or are we just discussing whether or not to do the training? That would take 3 people. So let's just start. Is there even a second, do we have a second person supporting compassion training? Okay, I'm not sensing any support for that. So I think that has to come off the list at this point. So the next one is noise ordinance. And that says discussion council. So is that something staff will bring forward?
Yes, we would bring it forward. I think this came formally at the last December meeting after being on and on, but staff is prepared if council wants to keep it on to bring it forward.
Forgive me, I don't remember why council put this on. What was the background of it?
So there was a couple of complaints regarding mechanical equipment in side yards that had drawn some interest from council, and then there was also kind of continued complaints about how we apply our noise ordinance, most prominently probably with pickleball and some other city activities at the community center and how it impacts the neighbors.
So does staff recommend changes to our noise ordinance? Because if not, I'm not sure why we would bring this forward.
I think staff would recommend changes to the mechanical equipment in the side yards because the information we provide on our website is not accurate. So whatever the decision is, we would like it to be compliant with what we do. I think the application of the noise ordinance here, we have a very comprehensive noise ordinance. It can be difficult to apply, but we have gotten pretty good at it. So I think that staff would recommend changes to the first one. I think the second one is based on how council feels about how the noise policy is applied.
Well, it sounds like it should come forward, so I would support that. Do we have, so it looks like we do have agreement to that should come forward then. Okay. The next one, moving on to the last page of the report, is airplane noise subcommittee. And it says that Councilmember Feiger and I agreed on this. I mean, I do agree it's important, but I'm not sure. Yes, go ahead, Councilmember.
So Mayor, I need to do some follow-up because I've talked with colleagues on other councils who also want to do something because we disbanded the roundtable, thank you. And so I know there's interest in forming some other group. I don't know if anybody has taken leadership on that. So let me talk to a couple of colleagues and see if we can just take this off or give more definition about what this would be.
Okay, so for now, we'll take it off.
Okay.
And you'll do some due diligence and you'll come back with the proposal to put it on the agenda.
As part of the future agenda items.
As part of future agenda items, depending on what you find out. Okay. Oh, what's this next one? Okay.
We're like, what?
CCTV, inspection, not surveillance, okay.
That's the automatic license plate.
I know. Poor Joe.
Top of mind.
Yeah. Okay, so that stays. So the flag policy pilot, second November meeting this year, I think we said we'd look at that, even if the report is just, a big goose egg or whatever, that's fine. That's fine too. All right, so that stays. Seating time, this is an interesting one.
That's something that I requested, and I think we can remove it. I don't think it's necessary. to have a
Okay.
discussion.
All right, we can always re-propose it if it becomes.
It can come up when you review the norms again.
And actually, that's a good point, because we're supposed to review them.
Yep.
Oh. All right, so seating time is gone. Legislative subcommittee, we already addressed. Perfect, we have actually, we have, I don't know if that even makes the norms, maybe. Because we sort of defined, and we're required to appoint a member to the Cities Association Legislative Subcommittee, so that's where it's at. Okay, so there's this City Council norms and procedures. We're required to do it when we have a new council member. We're required to do it every couple of years. We're due to look at the norms, so we'll need to think about when we want to do that. But that does need to come back. And here is the leaf blower enforcement. That is coming. Yes.
So, and I'll just speak to that, and I know we heard from a lot of our public on this, and I appreciate their emails and calls. So it's clearly on the list. I support it staying on the list. I think what we heard from residents is that they're hoping the mayor and city manager, and so everybody understands, it's up to the mayor and the city manager to decide when we agendize these different items. And I know from being mayor, different considerations go into when you agendize an item. But I definitely want to say I support it staying on, and I also support having it agendized as soon as possible.
So I'm going to take a contrary view. I don't think the issue is leaf blower enforcement. I think the issue is code enforcement more broadly.
Yes, you're right. So we should reword it. I agree.
I frankly disagree. This isn't, we're not supposed to discuss this actual item, but I will tell you that the ordinance is extremely poorly written. It penalizes the wrong people, and we need to tackle the ordinance itself.
So let's not, yes, okay, so we're not discussing it, but I hear you. I do believe that this is coming forward at some point soon, so that.
Yes, Mayor, we waited for tonight's conversation, so it will come forward soon.
Okay. Yeah. So SVCE electrification grant.
That's staff as well.
Staff as well, I see that. Aida. This next one is gone, right? HEU implementation study session?
It's everywhere now.
It's
but
everywhere.
It probably doesn't.
But it can come off this list. Yeah, repeat after me. Council accountability policy. Yeah, we did it already, actually. So this is off the list as well. Bicycle parking ratio ordinance. Oh, that's staff, right? Or what is that? Yeah, that's Nick.
Yeah.
So it's staff, but it is driven by the housing element. So some of these will start changing just to HEU, just for the simplistic terms is that the council's already made the commitment and that's the initiating item. So we don't have to request for direction or for the ability to initiate an amendment. Like most jurisdictions, we would have to come forward and ask to do the amendment first. But I don't have to do that for anything that's been noted in the housing element. So we'll start changing some of these to just be HEU for the initiated.
Having it more specific, I think is not bad, but you just write in parentheses after it HEU, so we know that it's part of the housing element. I think
Councilmember Liang, did you have a question? Your hand briefly flashed up, but.
Oh, yeah, my hand is up for when I didn't know if that's the bottom of the list. There's more.
No, we still have a few more.
Okay, yeah, because I need to add some things.
Oh, yeah, okay. So, all right, so bicycle parking ratio ordinance is coming forward. That's stuff. Acceptance of council chamber AV project, didn't we do that already?
It's not been accepted yet, but staff to bring forward.
Okay, so that is coming forward.
I think we will have meetings without any bugs.
No.
Okay, okay, oh, right.
Expand the vector control.
All right, we're getting punchy here, but we're actually, we're getting close. All right, citywide parking analysis, isn't that housing element,
It is housing element. We don't, I don't think that we need to have it on here as an ongoing thing until an RFP is released and we have a consultant brought on to at least start the initiation of everything.
Okay, Councilmember Daley?
The way it's written up above, we have comprehensive multimodal traffic study, analysis of recent projects, projected parking, etc. So it reads like it's potentially part of the study that's referenced above in our list of.
Where are you reading?
It's like the third or fourth one from the.
Yeah.
So you think it's redundant?
It could be. Either we take parking out of the one above.
Oh, that
and
one,
it's a
okay.
circulation study, and we do separate parking study. Both of which are much needed.
Well,
Much needed. It's just, it's a question of what, how are we wording these things?
What is under gym and one is under. Yeah, I mean, they're two different stories.
Okay.
That is a good.
So the direction would be to clarify, to clear up their action items. Yeah, you can take that on. Good. Design contract for streetscape. I thought that's done, right?
Where are we at? No, it's coming. It was a little ambitious, so they're updating the proposal, we'll be bringing it back to you.
Definitely, that for me.
Just your RFP. I feel like we did something on.
We have, sorry, go ahead.
I mean, no, sorry. We did an RFP originally. It was a scoping RFP. So we hired.
I knew we did something.
An RFP to select the most qualified consultants, which we did. They helped us scope the project and what's needed for a small contract. And now they're giving us a proposal to do a streetscape plan and design guidelines for our development community. And so they're in the process of redoing that proposal. Right.
So you'll bring it when the time is right.
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Liang, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, it was brought to our attention that we should try to put in about discussing the vector control for all areas of other areas within our city. So when we do the contract with vector control, can we consider the other neighborhoods that really find it problematic and other shopping districts? So
Well,
we can
I think
either
that's
put that, we can put that in enhancing and supporting other shopping districts. So,
Well, that's a proposed future agenda item. So let's finish this. list.
okay,
We're on design contract.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So let's finish where we are at. So you're bringing forward the design contract for streetscape. Enhancing other shopping districts. It says Anthony, but it has 3 names, including mine by it. So is this what is it?
The final form of how we track things. So this will show the council members who brought it forward, where we think it goes and who it's assigned to.
So it is coming forward.
Well,
Yeah.
based on council direction. This was at the last study session that
Yes.
this came forward.
I didn't get it then and I don't get it now. I mean, it feels like, it felt like it was brought forward because we spent a lot of time focusing on downtown. So let's make sure we're focusing on other parts of the city as well. And we should pay attention to other parts of the city. I mean, we've got what? 6 shopping districts, 6 business districts in the city?
7 other shopping districts.
I don't know, we're saying enhancing other shopping districts. I mean, what does that mean? Who needs an enhancement? What enhancement is there? Is this something that needs to be on our tentative calendar? It seems to me we should wait until we actually notice something that is needed or would really be beneficial for one of the other 6 business districts. I'm not opposed to enhancing them. I'm not opposed to helping them, but just to have it kind of on our tentative agenda as some amorphous placeholder when someone comes up with an idea doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
Could I speak to that?
Go ahead, Councilmember Liang, and then Councilmember Fliger.
I think it's important that we have the discussion, then we can provide some direction to staff as well. I think we haven't done as much outreach to our other districts on how we can better provide support and understand their needs.
Okay, Councilmember Fliger.
Thank you. And I agree with Councilmember Liang, the genesis for this is exactly what you said, Vice Mayor, where when we adopted the business communities goal last year, whereas with downtown, we have a specific plan that we adopted with our other business districts, really haven't talked about things we can do there. But how I view this agenda item, actually, it's for Mr. Carneseca to come back to us. This is, to me, this is not council driven, this is staff driven, where if there are ways that Mr. Carneseca can say, you know, Rancho or some specific shopping district, you know, this is something that he thinks he would recommend us to consider doing there, then I would want to hear about it.
So that makes a lot of sense to me. But if we're just inviting Anthony to come and talk to us or instruct, we're asking the city manager to have staff proactively reach out and then report back to council, I have no problem with any of that. But the way it's written up there and it's just kind of hanging out on our tentative agenda, I could see us having this exact same discussion 1 year from now.
So Mayor, if the council direction is to allow staff to come back with potential improvements, we'd be happy to do that. We can do that with it on or without it on the future agenda.
Would it be best as a study session?
It's up to staff, they want to bring it back as a study session.
And I think this is what she wanted to add vector control too.
Well, again, I think staff doesn't have an ask at this point. So again, we're happy to come back if there's something that we see. We feel the freedom to do that.
And it's one of our priorities. So, you know, we're interested in you bringing an idea to us.
Yeah.
But you know, all that being said, I'm more interested in staff focusing on getting the outdoor dining program downtown in order and ready for us to consider, as opposed to going to Rancho or Woodland and saying, what can we do to help?
And I don't view it as a proactive thing. We're at Mr. Carneseca is going to go out and try to, but if there is an idea, you know, however it occurs to him or however it comes about that he thinks would be good, I do want to, I want, as Mr. England said, it could either be on the list or not, as long as staff understands this is part of our priority. And if there's things we can really do to support our other business districts, let us know.
I mean, to me, I'm more comfortable with that than some presentation coming forward that doesn't really have a hook.
I agree.
Yeah, so it does fit in the priority as we outlined it tonight, so. I guess that means it comes off this list, but it is captured within the priorities, so. Okay. So that is the end of the list and the four, and I know we're actually not necessarily doing future agenda items tonight, though Councilmember Liang had one, but let me mention that I believe one of the items on the tentative calendar, and I think Mr. Carneseca is bringing that forward, is actually our future agenda items process, which, because we're all tired by the time we get to it, maybe leaves a little room for improvement. So that's coming up soon, right? I think I saw that sometime in the next month or two.
Yes, Mayor, we have that scheduled. I do think we've moved it back a meeting from where it appears on here. But of course, that's also at the, and that's why we included everything, as I was trying to say, everything's a future agenda item until council's taking action. So that is an item that we've moved up. We're getting ready to schedule, but it's also at the pleasure of council.
Okay. So then the question is, Councilmember Liang had a future agenda item. Is it already regarding vector control? Is it already implied in our goals? And so therefore it, I mean, is the priority or
vector control, staff would view a little differently. downtown is a public area where we have some responsibility for. We also have a partnership with the county. The city would not take on vector control for private property owners. That would include business districts that are privately held.
I think you said that before.
Yes.
So,
So is Loyola Corners then fall under that privately owned thing, and we wouldn't do anything for them as well?
So I don't know the boundaries of Loyola Corners, but again, we wouldn't proactively put out vector control if we didn't have a confirmed issue. And it's not Los Altos city staff that make that determination. That's the county makes that through their vector control department.
so that's not a future agenda item. We're going to be adding.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask you to stop sharing so we can just do the wrap up because we got through the list? So as long as you're clear on that, Councilmember Liang, I think the city manager explained it pretty clearly. So we got through that. We got through the agenda. You know, actually, I think we covered some fairly meaty topics. I mean, we didn't attempt to finish any of them, but we laid out some direction, and so we'll. Do any of my colleagues want to say anything as a wrap up? Because I don't really need to say more than that. Yeah. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting at 8:50 p.m., which is earlier than I thought we'd end, even without the power outage. So thank you all, and be careful in this wind. You know, anything can blow and hit. You know.
Why I drove